bothered to quit. He talked a lot about nationalism and how Labour was losing the fight against nationalists in Scotland, Wales, and with Reform UK. Is this really the main issue facing our country? Is streeting...
From Global's newsroom at 7 o'clock, 3 women whose bodies were recovered from the sea off Brighton a week ago have been identified as sisters. Jane Adatoro and Christina and Rebecca Walters were all in their 30s and from Uxbridge. LBC's Emma Core has the latest.
We have also had a heartbreaking statement from their father, Joseph. He's put out a tribute to his daughters. It reads, "Today, with a heart full of sorrow and love, I play tribute to my beloved daughters, whose lives ended so tragically far too soon. No words," he says, "can describe the pain of losing 3 daughters in the prime of their lives."
A planned increase in fuel duty in September has been put on hold to help offset the rising cost of oil. The Prime Minister has revealed the cut of 5p per litre introduced by the Tories in 2022 will be extended for the rest of the year. Meanwhile, Keir Starmer has insisted he is not lifting sanctions on Russian oil. He's been accused of going soft on Moscow after delaying plans to ban jet fuel and diesel refined in third countries. Trade Minister Chris Bryant has told Tonight with Andrew Marr critics misunderstand the policy as these products were never banned previously.
The regulations banning the import into the UK of uranium and of oil products that have been processed in other countries but originally came from Russia came into effect today. We decided that we wanted to phase that process in.
But speaking at Prime Minister's questions, Kemi Badenoch has accused the Prime Minister of buying dirty Russian oil. Shadow Energy Secretary Claire Coutinho has told Andrew she rejects criticism that the Tories failed to restrict the imports at all.
Look, the way that sanctions work is you ratchet them up over time with your allies. You work in lockstep with people to freeze out hostile states. This was something which was agreed in October 2025 that would be brought in. And now, unlike the EU is maintaining these sanctions on jet fuel and diesel that will come from Indian refineries using Putin's oil. We are not. That is the difference. That is why Ukraine is specifically criticising us today.
Wes Streeting has warned Labour is losing the fight to nationalism and risks handing the keys to number 10 to reform. The former Health Secretary has been making his resignation speech in the Commons. He also raised concerns about the future of the next generation and says the government mustn't waste any time.
That's our job now, as the old economy of the 20th century finally gives way to the AI revolution of the 21st, and to tackle the crisis facing the next generation as an emergency with the urgency that the moment requires. Never waste a minute. That's been my mantra in government, and it's why I don't believe our party has time to waste in government treading water.
Mr Streeting has previously said he would stand in a possible future Labour leadership contest. It says it's been confirmed the Makerfield by-election will take place on the 18th of June. Labour's candidate Andy Burnham is expected to challenge Sir Keir Starmer if he wins the seat. The party's deputy leader, Lucy Powell, has told Andrew Marr she doesn't think he will, but wants him to be on the front bench.
You know, I think Andy Burnham is a huge asset to the Labour Party and the Labour government. I think that we need to have our best players, you know, on the pitch, not just on the pitch, but, you know, starting from the starting whistle and contributing and being there.
Bring him straight in.
And, you know, I want all of our talents, and whether that is Wes Streeting, whether that's Angela Rayner, whether that's Andy Burnham.
And Southampton have apologised after spying on rival clubs' training sessions, but say their punishment is disproportionate. They've been kicked out of the Championship playoff final. In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed up 101 points at 10,432. The pound buys $1.34 and €1.15. LBC weather, showers easing tonight with clear spells for central and eastern areas. Rain moving in from the west later, a low of 3. Mostly cloudy tomorrow with rain and showers in the west and north. Staying drier in the far southeast with brighter spells developing later. Highs of 24 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Amelia Cox.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. It's 5 minutes past 7 on LBC. It's Iain Dale here with you until 10. I wonder how many of you remember, I think it was November the 13th, 1990. Aggie Chambray doesn't, because she wasn't alive at that point, I don't think.
1992.
Oh, right, OK, I was right. Because that was the day that Sir Geoffrey Howe made his explosive resignation speech in the House of Commons, which in the end contributed massively to Margaret Thatcher being brought down. Wes Streeting made his equivalent speech today, and I don't think it reached that height of rhetoric. I don't think it's going to have the same effect on Keir Starmer. Maybe he didn't want it to have that effect. Maybe he's biding his time. I don't know. It's impossible to read the minds of politicians in these circumstances. But I want to pick out one thing that he said in the speech. He pointed to the fact that Labour and the country in general was losing the fight against nationalism. He cited the rise of Plaid Cymru in Wales, the SNP in Scotland and the rise of reform in England, well, actually the whole of the UK, as something that the government didn't seem to be getting a grip on. And if it didn't, that could affect our politics for generations. So my question to you in this hour is, are you as concerned as Wes Streeting? Or if you are a supporter of Plaid Cymru, the SNP, or Reform UK, do you think it's actually frankly insulting to just diss you as a nationalist, as if being a nationalist is necessarily a bad thing or a dangerous thing? 0345 6060 973. The reason I thought that was a bit of an odd thing for him to do, an odd road for him to go down, is because I think there are so many more issues that are more important to this country than that. But interested to hear your views on this. Well, Aggie Chambray is going to take us through the speech. Aggie?
Well, it was 2:26 today, Iain, when the former Health Secretary stood up in the House of Commons and gave his resignation speech. He did talk about nationalism, but he elsewhere talked about the UK failing to protect young people from the AI jobs apocalypse, and that the government needed to fight for young people who, for the first time in our modern history, face worse prospects than the last. He talked about the Andy Burnham by-election bid and said the battle was between progressives and reactionaries of patriots versus nationalists of hope over hate. And he said that the same fight that Labour, he said, was having was for the fight of our country. Now, he talked about the difficulty of leaving government, saying it was an emotional wrench, but warned that Labour does not have time to waste in government treading water. And he talked about Labour's challenge in battling against the nationalism put forward by Reform UK and also by the SNP in Scotland, Plaid Cymru in Wales. He instead, he said, wanted to champion patriotism and explain the differences between that and nationalism.
Patriotism is not about who you exclude. It is about who you stand beside. It is not rooted in fear of change or suspicion of difference. It is rooted in solidarity, in the belief that we rise or fall together. That is the best of our country's story. A Britain where people from different backgrounds, different faiths, different nations and regions still see themselves in one another. A country where the son of Indian pharmacists can become our first Hindu Prime Minister without having his Englishness questioned. A patriotism built not on blood and soil, but on shared values, shared institutions, and shared responsibilities. I understand that the SNP and Plaid Cymru will not see themselves in the English nationalist politics of the party that sits behind them. But nationalism is not progressive, and nationalism and patriotism are not the same things. Nationalism says, look inward, protect your own, turn away from the others. Patriotism says this country is strongest when we are confident enough to be outward-looking, generous and united.
That was Wes Streeting in his resignation speech in the House of Commons. And in contrast that with what was said in the White House last night by the US Vice President J.D. Vance, who was asked during a press briefing what he thought about the Unite the Kingdom march organised by Tommy Robinson, among others, which took place in London on Saturday.
What you see all over the West, and it's kind of crazy, is this idea that the way to generate prosperity is to bring in millions and millions of unvetted people and drop them into your neighborhoods, and we simply reject that idea. So to everybody in the UK who rejects that idea, I'd encourage them to just keep on going. It's okay to want to defend your culture. It's okay to want to live in a safe neighborhood. It's okay to want your job to go to yourself and your neighbors and not to a stranger who you don't even know. It is reasonable for the people in Western societies to want to control who comes into their country and who doesn't. A lot of people, frankly, a lot of people in the media have tried to persuade all of those people that it's somehow racist to want to protect your borders.
That was J.D. Vance speaking last night. Ian, I mentioned the by-election, which we now know. We have a date for it. It is officially the 18th of June, so less than a month.
The very week I'm on holiday. Oh, can you believe it?
I can't believe it. They would have done that on purpose. Yeah, exactly. But we had a few candidates already confirmed. So Andy Burnham for Labour, Alan Howling, Lord Hope for the Monster Raving Loony Party, Robert Kenyon for Reform UK, and Rebecca Shepherd for Restore Britain.
Aggie, thank you very much indeed. Well, let's get a bit of commentary on this. First of all, from Jennifer Nadal, who is Chief Executive of the Compassion in Politics think tank, which aims to put compassion, inclusion and cooperation at the heart of politics. Jennifer, very good evening. Wes Streeting there was trying to draw a distinction between nationalism and patriotism. Of course, there is a distinction, otherwise there would be the same word, I guess. But do you think he's barking up the right tree when he talks about the fact that if you're a nationalist, you are by definition somebody who wants to exclude people, that wants to create divides in society? I think a lot of people who would describe themselves as nationalists would reject that.
I think the two terms are really easily conflated and confused, and we may use nationalism in our daily conversation to mean a love of country and a love of Britain and thinking that Britain is great. But there is something pernicious, which is what Streeting was really talking about, that has arisen in this country. And that is the form of nationalism that involves waving the flag of St. George, not as a symbol of national pride, or not just as a symbol of national pride, but also as a statement against others, against migrants, against people who don't necessarily look like they were born in this country or weren't born in this country. And we've seen a distinct rise in the levels of racism in this country since Brexit. And of course, in the local elections, we have just seen a huge wave of support sweeping the country for a form of nationalism that is about division. And I think the left have for too long been frightened of claiming pride of country. So I think that's what Streeting's trying to do. He's trying to say, I'm a patriot and Britain is a great nation. It welcomes those who aren't born on this shore, and that we do include everyone. And I think that's great. I think it was a really positive speech. I am old enough to remember Geoffrey Howe and Michael Heseltine saying it was like being savaged by a dead sheep. And Streeting had a very different tone. He had an inclusive tone. He tried to create the vision that we have really been lacking under Starmer. And so I think it was a good opening salvo in his leadership campaign.
You do realise that you just called all Reform UK voters racist in what you just said?
No, I don't think that all Reform UK voters are racist.
Well, that was the implication of what you said.
That was the implication. Thank you so much for picking me up on that. I don't think that, but I certainly think that there are racist elements in the party, and that while many people vote for Reform because they feel they've been forgotten about, because they've been excluded, because the leader of Reform has a narrative about how we can make Britain great again, about how we can actually make Britain fair again. I get that. And that's the space, that's the vacuum that Labour has created by not stepping in and listening to people living on the front line of societies that are struggling and communities that are struggling. So I certainly didn't mean to imply that everyone who votes reform is racist. I know many people who voted reform, but I certainly do think that fringes of reform and the space that it's occupying tilt towards a form of nationalism that is exclusive.
Why is English nationalism seen by the left as something to abhor? And yet the SNP, which describes itself as a nationalist party, it's in the name, they seem to get away scot-free because they describe themselves as a party of the left. Similarly with Plaid Cymru, like nationalism in Scotland and Wales, good, nationalism in England, bad. There's something inconsistent there, isn't there?
I think there is. Well, actually, I don't think there is, because I think that the Scottish National Party and Plaid Cymru in Wales are talking about having an inclusive country. They're talking about wanting to have control of their own nation. But the kind of nations that they talk about are nations that are inclusive, that are inviting, that are founded on equality, that don't want to go backwards in time, but want to move forwards in time and create progressive, equal societies. But I don't think that's what we're hearing from Reform. What we're hearing from Reform is a vision of a Britain that is founded on whiteness.
Oh, for goodness sake. Do you realise you undermine your whole argument when you come out with rubbish like that? There's nothing in Reform. I mean, I'm not a Reform voter, but I would never dream of saying that their platform was founded on whiteness. I mean, please.
I didn't say that their platform was. I said there are fringes in there. And if you take the time to research some of the people who are funding Reform, some of the people who are putting their money into it, some of the people in America who are influencing its growth and the foreign money that is coming in, you will see that they are not people who want a united Britain. They don't want to unite this kingdom. They want a divided kingdom. They want to see the rights of ordinary citizens rolled back. And it's dangerous. But I also understand why it's appealing. And it's appealing because no one else is talking to those sections of the community that have felt excluded, not governed for. And that's what Westminster politics has failed to do, which is why we're seeing the Green Party as well coming up on the other side, and the nationalists in Scotland and Wales, parties that are saying, we will listen to you, we will make your communities the sort of communities you want to live in, and we won't govern by elite.
OK, thank you very much. That's Jennifer Nadell, Chief Executive of Compassion in Politics, an interesting name. Andrew Allison joins me now, Head of Campaigns of the Popular Conservatism Campaign Group. I imagine, Andrew, you weren't very impressed by what you've just heard.
Not particularly. And no, I mean, I'm getting rather sick and tired of people like me who want controlled immigration, who want secure borders, just being described as far-right racists. Those of us who do vote for Reform or are members of Reform, and I did leave the Conservative Party and join Reform, we're not a bunch of racists. I would suggest that what she needs to do is attend a meeting of the Reform holds, either go to the conference or go to some regional meetings and actually speak to people. It's just full of patriotic people who basically just want control of their country, which is what Brexit was promising.
But there are fringes within Reform that do meet the categorisation that she alleged there. There are some unsavoury elements, but then again, I suppose you could argue, well, the Labour Party has those, the Conservative Party has those. Why should Reform be any different? But they have found it difficult to root them out.
Well, I would argue that as well, Ian, because I've come across racists before in the Conservative Party, and I've come across racists in the Labour Party as well. So there's always going to be a fringe there. It's about rooting out that fringe, kicking those people out when they open their mouth or put a post on Twitter or Facebook.
What is the difference to you between nationalism and patriotism?
I would regard myself as a patriotic person. I'm very proud of my country. I'm very proud of what it has done. I think nationalism can be insular. It can be very inward-looking, but I don't believe the majority of the British people are like that. And the Reform members that I've come across, I don't believe are like that. I think what Wes Streeting has to do, and other people in the Labour Party, particularly the Prime Minister, is ask, why are people going on the street? Why are they protesting? What are their problems? Instead of just categorising them as far-right racists, actually talk to them and find out what their problems are. You know, we've had more immigration into the UK since 1997 than we have from 1066 to 1997. There's no doubt that it has been a massive wave of people coming into the country. And many people believe that we just can't cope with that. Our public services can't cope with that. That's not racist. That's just being practical.
I should have said this to Jennifer, but what I'd really like her to do is to meet some of the people from ethnic minorities who were at that march at the weekend. And I'm not saying that everybody there was necessarily of the same view, but there were plenty of ethnic minority people that I've seen talking to camera, waving a flag of St. George, actually. There was a great black guy who was born in this country, and he resents the fact that people from other people say to him, well, how can you be English? You're black. Well, to my mind, if you're born here, that gives you every right to say that you're English. We're not a monoculture anymore, and I would decry anybody, whether they're Reform UK, Conservatives or whatever party, who wants to discriminate against people on the basis of the colour of their skin. But, I mean, surely anybody who's patriotic would want to welcome the fact that people from different backgrounds, who are maybe first or second generation immigrants, have assimilated into this country in a way that possibly they might not have done in others.
Yes, I completely agree. I agree with that completely, Ian. I've spoken to a number of people at various meetings, and particularly around the Brexit debate time as well. I remember one I attended in Bradford, or somewhere near Bradford, and you had a lot of people there who were sort of second-generation immigrants, some of them first-generation immigrants, who were very annoyed at the amount of immigration coming in and the people who were coming in illegally, because they had to jump through so many hoops to come here legally. And they were very proud of their country, and they disagreed with what was going on. So I think what she has to, I mean, compassion in politics, was it, Ian? Is that?
Yeah, very, very strange. Didn't seem very compassionate to me.
Well, she wasn't very compassionate at all, and certainly not compassionate to people like me who hold those views, who are not racist. We're just patriotic people. We want control of our borders. Nothing wrong with that. It's what every other country in the world does.
Andrew, thank you very much indeed. 0345 6060 973. What do you think is the difference between nationalism and patriotism? And what did you make of what Wes Streeting said? Is this really the biggest divide in British politics now, whether you would describe yourself as a nationalist or not? I think it's a total misreading of our politics if he thinks that that is the main issue affecting the country today. It's 21 minutes past 7.
This is LBC.
Daniel liked how easy it was to transfer his old pensions to PensionBee.
I've had quite an eclectic career, and with that I'd amassed pensions from a couple of different providers. I signed up using the app. It was really straightforward. I was able to give them a couple of key facts about each of my pensions, and then PensionBee did the rest of the work for me.
At PensionBee, we believe that when your pension is in a good place, you're in a good place. Download the app or go to pensionbee.com. and be pension confident when investing your capital is at risk.
For unbeatable prices on printer ink and toner, more people are switching to cartridgepeople.com. Like Max, whose kids have discovered printable colouring sheets. And now there's no going back. And Jen, a business owner who wants printer cartridges so economical, she can print herself a pay rise. For unbeatable prices on printer ink and toner, switch to cartridgepeople.com. T's and C's apply. See online for our price promise.
The following is from TfL.
My name was Luna, like the moon. I was 2 days short of my 17th birthday when I was killed. My killer wasn't a bad man. He had a rescue dog called Frank and rang his mum every Sunday. He wasn't a speed freak. He just thought it was okay to go a few miles an hour over the limit. But that was enough to knock me off my bike and kill me.
Speeding injures or kills over 1,000 people in London every year. Slow down. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Iain Dale on LBC.
23 minutes past 7. Jeff says, I didn't realise you were such an out-and-out racist. Any support for Reform UK means you're racist. You are racist. Such a disgrace. You do realise Reform stands against homosexuality. Are you a Sonderkommando? What will Nigel make of you if he gets in? I'm so disappointed in you. Well, Jeff, I'm so disappointed that I have such a thick and bigoted listener such as you, because there is not a racist bone in my body, and I would challenge you to find any evidence that I've ever said or thought anything racist. You won't be able to, because there is no evidence. You say that any support for Reform UK means you're racist. I mean, that's a terrible thing to say. You have just smeared millions of ordinary people who vote for Reform UK as racist. Now, I'm sure that there is the odd one or two that are. But to just say that supporting them means you're racist is ridiculous. And I've made very clear, I'm not a Reform UK voter. It's highly unlikely that I would vote for them at the next election. And you say Reform UK stands against homosexuality. Their chairman, actually I think he's just gone, but Dr. David Bull is gay. They have plenty of people in their senior ranks who are gay. So don't try and smear people in this way. It's absolutely disgusting. Let's go to Catherine in Muswell Hill. Catherine, hi.
Hello, Ian. You're in a bad mood.
It's just idiots like that. There's no other word for them but idiot. I mean, I could use plenty of other words, actually, and plenty of adjectives before that. But anyway, do carry on, Catherine.
I'll do my best. Normally I listen to you and whilst I'm cooking and thinking, and I'm not in the same political arena necessarily that you are, but I think you've got a fairly... You take the temperature of things quite well often, I think, and it's more interesting for someone like me who is politically in a different place than you. On this particular occasion, I don't agree with your analysis of what you're saying. I listened to Wes Streeting this afternoon, and I was really interested in what he was saying. I really perked up when I listened to it. And I think you've decontextualised the point he was making about nationalism and patriotism. And because you've decontextualised it, you've missed something really important. Not deliberately, I don't think you're trying to misrepresent him. But what I heard was him talking about the survey which suggested or demonstrated that young people wouldn't be willing to fight for their country. And he made the point, and I thought it was a point really well made, that young people made an extraordinary sacrifice through the COVID years, even though they personally were not particularly at risk, or the majority of them were not particularly at risk from that virus. And in so doing, demonstrated an enormous love of country and community. And that is what he identified as patriotism. Yeah. And then he went on to articulate how that differentiates from nationalism, which, for me, that is an important point. It's a point well made. And just to kind of extract that one thing about nationalism v patriotism, I feel distorts what he was trying to say.
But why is it? I mean, the question that I asked our guest Jennifer, which she didn't really have an answer to, why is nationalism in Wales and Scotland seen as an okay thing, whereas in England it isn't? Because I don't know. I mean, I suppose that there have to be degrees of nationalism, maybe, and yes, there is a sort of racist fringe that would describe themselves as nationalist. But I don't believe that most people who would describe themselves as nationalist are intrinsically racist.
I think there's always going to be a bit of a Venn diagram, isn't there, of a big sort of intersect of people who share similar concerns and shared values, which one of them might call nationalist and another might call patriotic. And at the edges of both of those is where you see the divergence. And there's no doubt that in some areas of England, and indeed in Scotland and Wales, nationalism is very insular, is politically, ideologically, inward-looking.
But it doesn't have to be, does it? Just because you believe that your country should be independent, that doesn't mean to say it can't also be outward-looking.
Of course. I mean, yeah, I can't disagree with that. It's not a necessity, but what it does tend to do is scoop up and feed on a sort of insular view of a particular geographical area where it might then be difficult to... Hang on, I'm not expressing this very well. I suppose what I'm saying is, if you ask me what is the difference between English nationalism versus Scottish versus Welsh, I wouldn't be able to answer that question. I'm not Welsh, I'm not Scottish. I have asked myself the question often, why is it that nationalism in Scotland is a kind of left-wing, progressive political movement, whereas in England it's a right-wing and very politically, to my mind, regressive political movement. And I I can't answer my own question. I don't know.
Well, I think it is because it's being portrayed in that way. In that, I think there is a very good argument if Scotland has its own parliament, if Northern Ireland has its own effective parliament, if Wales has its own parliament. Why is it that it's seen as insular or nationalist to argue that England should have its own parliament? I mean, again, it's because England is, I suppose, we have, 85% of the population of the United Kingdom. People say, oh, well, England's the most powerful country, therefore it's unbalanced, and therefore we have to give more rights to Scotland and Wales. Well, by having done that, that has actually contributed, I think, to the rise of a degree of English nationalism over the last 20 years.
Possibly, yeah, possibly. I think I can sort of follow some of your argument. But just to go back to Wes Streeting, I think the main point he was trying to make was that a lot of people who are not reform voters, who dislike a lot of their politics, still want to be able to call themselves patriotic. And he was, I hate the word, reclaiming that. And I liked what I heard.
You clearly did, Catherine. Well, we haven't fallen out, have we? Because you've articulated yourself in a brilliant way, unlike our previous texter. Catherine, thank you very much indeed. Mark says, because nationalism in Scotland and Wales is about wanting to leave England, nationalism in England is about wanting other people to leave England. They are arguably opposite. You see, which political party, this is a quiz question, I'll tell you the answer after the news. Which political party in the United Kingdom is the only one to ban anybody from its membership who's been a member of the British National Party? Answer me that. Have a couple of minutes to think about it. Let's get the news headlines in the meantime with Amelia Cox at 7:31.
3 women whose bodies were recovered from the sea off Brighton Beach were sisters. Their father has paid tribute to his daughters, Jane Adatoro and Christina and Rebecca Walter, who are all in their 30s. The Ministry of Defence says 2 Russian jets repeatedly and dangerously intercepted an RAF spy plane above the Black Sea. A Russian Su-35 jet flew so close it triggered the aircraft's emergency systems, which disabled the autopilot. And fuel duty will be frozen until at least next year to help ease the cost of living. A 5p cut per litre introduced by the Conservatives in 2022 was due to expire in September. LBC weather, showers easing tonight with clear spells for central and eastern areas. Rain moving in from the west later, a low of 3 degrees.
This is LBC.
With over 50 years' experience at Fidelity, we know the difference between investing and being invested. Investing is a transaction. Being invested is about the future you want to build. With our guidance, expert insights, and wealth of investment options, you can feel confident about your long-term goals. For ISAs, pensions, or advice, be invested with Fidelity. Go to fidelity.co.uk. Your capital is at risk. Terms apply.
Feel every pass and every goal. Discover the next generation of televisions at John Lewis. Experience the full clarity of the latest RGB and OLED technology. Brought to you by some of the world's best brands. Price matched against 25 leading retailers with a 5-year guarantee on all TVs. Your best view of every game is available right now at John Lewis. It's football upgraded. T's and C's and exclusions apply. See johnlewis.com for details.
There's one green bottle sat on my fridge shelf. This green and white bottle that supports my gut health. Beautiful by nature, beautiful by name. It's the tastiest way to up my gut health game.
Beautiful Gut Health. Switch your yogurt to the UK's #1 kefir and give your gut and your summer a lift. Kefir is a source of calcium which contributes to the normal function of digestive enzymes. For verification of UK's #1 kefir, see beautifulguthealth.com/radio.
This is LBC with Iain Dale. Call 0345 6060 973.
7:33. So this is the answer to my quiz question. Which political party in the UK is the only one to ban anyone who's ever been a member of the BNP? Bizarrely, it's Reform UK. You don't get that in any of the other political parties in this country. Now, that's not to say that there aren't people in Reform UK who maybe have had similar views to the BNP at one stage or another. And I'm not sitting here promoting or defending Reform UK. I'm not a member of them. I don't vote for them. I'm a member of the Conservative Party. I vote for the Conservative Party. So I've got no interest in bigging them up, but I really resent the fact that just because somebody is on the right of British politics, that they're automatically dismissed as an evil nationalist. We'll come back to your calls on this in just a moment, but first, the Chancellor has extended the freeze on fuel duty for a further 3 months, and also supermarket bosses have hit back at ministers over calls to freeze prices on staple foods and drinks, a more communist idea I think I've never heard. So let's get some commentary on this from Peter Matajic, who is Chief and Analyst of the Joseph Rowntree Foundation. Peter, very good evening to you. Let's start off with the fuel duty freeze. Now, in a way, I think everybody thought this was inevitable. I think the only surprise is they've only agreed to do it for 3 months.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think it's sort of, the question is like, what will people notice really? So obviously it's a useful thing for it not to go up, but equally, it's not going down, and probably the actual cost of fuel will also actually be going up as well. So I think, it's useful, but I think it's certainly not sufficient for the scale of the issues that we are seeing from people we're talking with.
No, and when you look at the price of a litre of petrol or diesel at the moment, I mean, it has come down a little bit over the last few days, but when you're at £1.89 per litre compared to like 2 months ago, it was £1.40 something. I mean, that is a pretty big leap, and 5 pence doesn't really touch the sides, does it?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's what we're looking for, is actual things that people will feel in their pockets and that people will notice. And I think that's going to be the key test for whatever's announced tomorrow.
Now, what about this idea that I know the SNP have been at the forefront of this, and Labour, well, I'm not sure whether they really believe this or not, but it's certainly in all the papers today that there are papers within government that are calling on supermarkets to freeze prices on staple foods and drinks. I mean, the supermarkets obviously hit back against this, and in my view, quite right too. Do you think this is in any way likely?
No, so true. But I do think the government can intervene on costs in some markets. So obviously they've already done so in the energy price cap. We at JRF think that there's things that can be done in terms of capping rents a little bit. But I think it's trying to think about which markets actually need intervention in. So obviously the energy market is where all the action is in terms of the Iran conflict. The housing market, obviously it'll take time for supply and demand to equalise. So we're thinking those are more suitable markets for intervention than food, which, as far as we can see, is quite a competitive market already.
Well, food costs in this country are lower than most Western European countries, aren't they? So you sort of think, well, why would anyone think this was a good idea when, as you say, we have a hugely competitive supermarket market?
Yeah, although what we do see with our surveys that 5 million people are cutting back on meals because of costs and struggling to make ends meet, but we think that's partly down to income as well as the actual costs on the other side. And we think, I think looking at energy use and looking at unaffordable rents are probably more suitable markets for intervention. But I think people are struggling and need to feel the support from the government. So I suppose I wouldn't say anything's off the table, but it has to be. You have to think about is it good for now, but is it also suitable for long term as well? And what's the sort of end game, and where's the destination? And some of these kind of sticking plasters may help for a little while, but then what's the consequences?
Thank you very much, Peter. That's Peter Matajic, Chief Analyst for the Joseph Rowntree Foundation. Right, back to your calls on West Streeting speech and nationalism. And we haven't talked about J.D. Vance. We played a bit of his comments out earlier. Now, I'm not a fan of J.D. Vance in the slightest. But I did... When he says it's reasonable to control the borders and who you let into your own country, I can't really see that there's anything that most people would disagree with that. I think it's a statement of the blinding obvious. And I mean, his first bit was that we haven't really been doing that over the last 10 or 15 years. And it's hard to disagree with that in some ways. Do you think patriotism, or nationalism in particular, has to be, by definition, exclusive? If you actually look at the Cambridge Dictionary definition of nationalism, it's A great or too great a love of your own country. Patriotism is the feeling of loving your country more than any other and being proud of it. Well, let's hear from Sam in Penge. Hi, Sam.
Hi, Ian.
What would you like to tell us?
I think for us to understand the situation, there's three things that I want to bring up before I make my point, if that's okay.
Go on.
As a white man, to tell people what is racist or what is not racist, there's no one's going to take your argument seriously as a white man, unfortunately. So you have to get over that. The difference between...
Well, I'm not going to get over it when someone accuses me of being racist when they have no basis for saying that.
You come across sometimes as very naive, even though you're not. Sometimes when you speak, especially around religion and minorities, I mean, what was the point in bringing up black people when you spoke about the march? What has that got to do with
because I happened to see on Instagram a video of a black guy proudly with the English flag explaining why he felt patriotically English.
And I also saw a Korean guy with bacon on his shoulders playing a cello. So again, you, on one hand, your point is correct. There is black people that are going to attend the march. I saw Iranian flags being waved. I saw Israeli flags being waved. I saw all kinds of different flags. Jamaican. I saw all kinds of different flags.
Well, isn't that how it should be?
No, that's exactly how it should be. But what is the common denominator between all of those people waving those flags? The naivety, the ignorance around the whole religion, because it's not about the United Kingdom. What relevance has the 15th of May got with anybody in the UK? What was so important about the 15th of May that they had to run a United Kingdom march?
No idea. You tell me.
Nothing. It was a Nakba. So again, like you say all of these things, we get it. I'm British as well. When I see the Union Jack, I don't get offended. When I see the St. George's Cross, I get offended because it's associated with nationalism that we grew up with as foreigners to this country. So now we are British, we sound it, we look it more or less, right? But when people, because the way we look and the way we sound, people kind of, relapse around you and they'll start talking about politics and they'll sound so naive. And when they're talking to you, they don't know that you're a Muslim, they don't know that you're a foreigner, but they will continue. You will have a great conversation. And then as I leave, I will say to him, sorry, my man, I'm sure we had a great conversation, but you just sat with an Albanian Muslim for an hour. We had a great conversation. I didn't try to rape your sister. I didn't try to rape your mum. A completely normal guy. But the media would portray me as the worst of the worst in this country. And because so many people will buy it, it's completely accepted, especially within, the public.
Well, look, there are elements of the media that do play that game, and they shouldn't do it. I completely agree with you. I hope you would agree that.
And the right is always associated with the kind of guys in the media that you despise. So, like the J.D. Vances in the world that you said a minute ago, you can't stand. J.D. Vance is associated with the right side of our media because they could never come and have a genuine conversation and interview with the actual media in this country who could hold them account. We are led by donkeys. We can see this at the moment, they will go and interview some stupid extremist Muslim and get his point of view across, and then they will never go and get a moderate Muslim who lives amongst us. We're completely normal. I pay £900 a month tax. I worked my butt off, right? And then I get this English guy who's fishing on the Devon coast, because that's where I am right now, right? And he sits there and he tells me, these migrant hotels. I said, how many migrant hotels? Because I don't know. I'm not from here. I'm from South London. And I said, how many migrant hotels are there around here? I think he said there's 6 or something like that. And when I went and looked for it, I couldn't find any. So it's like this guy, his only view of the world is Muslim immigrants bad. We're paying for it. Everyone is 0.6% of national GDP. It's not even 8%. It's a percentage point. And we are kicking up a fuss about that.
I think people kick up a fuss the fact that the taxpayer is having to fund people who come to this country illegally, often with no grounds for asylum at all. And it shows that the system is not in control of our borders, and any country has a right to be able to control its borders.
Okay, every country has a right to control its borders. We are in control of our borders. Why do you not talk about the reduction in numbers that we've got coming into the country right now?
I do.
Why do you? I haven't heard you talk about it.
Well, you don't listen to me all the time then, because I haven't mentioned it.
Okay, because you've come on in the evenings, I don't listen to you as much anymore. But I've heard you before, Ian. I used to listen to you all the time. You know, I actually spoke to you before, and I genuinely agree with a lot of the points that you speak about. But this is why I say to you about the racism. You come across sometimes as so naive when everybody knows you're not. So then the only assumption we can make of that is that you're a racist. Because if you live in this day and age and you can't come to an agreement with what is wrong with the world, then unfortunately you're always going to see different points of view, but it's not going to be something you can discuss. There's no debate. There's no debate anymore, because one side says something and the other side gets, arrested and sent to court on these bloody, these crazy Hollywood.
Well, you call me naive. I'm called a lot of things, but one of the things that I think I have done, whether it was when I was doing Drive or on the evening show, and it's actually more easier to do on an evening show because you can have a longer discussion about things. One of the things that I have tried to do is to calm this debate on immigration down and try to encourage people to come onto the programme, to explain sometimes why they are here, what motivated them to come here in the first place, what they've achieved since they've been here, and what they contribute to the country, not just the economy, but to society in general. On a few occasions, I've actually done phone-ins where I've said, I only want to hear from people who came to this country illegally, and I've got a lot of flack for doing that, as you can imagine. But I think it's important that we don't just talk about this amorphous group, this anonymous group called immigrants. So therefore, I want people to understand from individual people who've come to this country, maybe in dire circumstances, to say, look, everyone's a human being. Everybody's got the same motivation. Everyone wants to improve the lives of themselves and their family. Mm-hmm. And that's the overwhelming majority of people who come to this country, whether they're coming through here legally or not.
Ian, please, this is another thing, can we not talk about the facts when it comes to these immigrants? Because once these immigrants become settled in their passport, in their travel document, they don't even have a passport, they have something called a travel document. It actually tells you no force to public funds. You cannot get public funds. You can't get housing. You can't get benefits. You don't just get these things that they say that these people believe that that's what's going on. Because people believe that's what's going on, unfortunately, you're not going to have a real discussion because they're not told facts. They made up some lie about, they're getting these houses, they're getting all these benefits, they're all driving these mobility cars. Listen, I know more people that are British that haven't worked since the miners' strike in the 80s, that moved over from Wales, right? And they claim so much benefits and mobility. They've never worked a day in their life, but they live better than all of us, my friend. So it's I get what you guys are.
Yeah, and I will.
You get shown the rare occasion where some guy has come over probably for medical aid. They've probably come over with a disabled child, right? And they're not going to come over just with the disabled child. They're going to come over with the whole kids. You're not going to put a child who's going through medical care in some, studio flat. You're going to put them in a house. And we get it. It looks bad in the media when these frustrated people that are fed up with the country because we're not. These are just scapegoats, but they're not called that. They're called illegal immigrants. But all they are scapegoats because there shouldn't be no such thing as illegal immigration. What is that? This is only happening because of what's going on in the world, not because it's so welcoming here. It's not that nice here, Ian. Let's be real, my friend. I'd much rather live in a nice, warm country. But you know what I'm saying? We all got to work hard, and everybody does. But like I said, I pay £900 a month tax. I'm frustrated as well. I'm not stupid enough to sit there and blame illegal immigrants who came here for nothing. They came here for a better life. Imagine if a war was to hit London and you was a refugee. Where would you go, Ian? What do you think you would do? Where would you go? What would be the first place you would go to if London became one of these places like the Middle East? Where would you go? You wouldn't even know where to go, Ian. You'd become a refugee. Imagine how you would like to be treated. I'm sorry, I went on a rant, but it's so frustrating. It's so frustrating, Ian, because look, I love this country, but I can see it going downhill, and there's such a chasm. It's not a division anymore. It's a chasm between so-called right and so-called left. Yeah. There's no such thing as right or left. It's just literally the same people frustrated, fed a different bunch of lies.
Well, I'll tell you what, when the difference between right and left becomes people see it as the difference between evil and good, then we really do have a problem in this country. You're absolutely right on that. Sam, I'm 4 minutes late for a break, so I hope you feel you've had a good run, because I think you have. I'm pretty sure that you and I could probably debate with each other for about an hour, but I had better go to a break. Thank you very much indeed for a very spirited call. On Cross Question at 8, we've got Jack Abbott, the Labour MP, Harriet Cross, Conservative MP, James Bloodworth, the journalist, and columnist for the Sunday Telegraph, Janet Daly. 7:49.
On the latest episode of The Newsagents.
Why the man who forced Trump to release the Epstein files has found himself losing his own seat to Trump's challenger. Is Trump scared of Epstein, or is he just trying to bully people out of office?
Get the latest episode of The Newsagents with Emily Maitlis, John Sopel and Lewis Goodall. Listen or watch on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Mr. and Little Miss are back in Happy Meal and they're off on a road trip. Your little one can go somewhere exciting with Little Miss Brave, laugh all the way there with Mr. Tickle, or make up an adventure all of their own. On this road trip, anything's possible. Some fun, some food, it's all inside this Happy Meal. Until the 8th of June from 11 a.m. Includes one pre-selected book or toy while stocks last, subject to availability.
Ocado price match your shop to over 10,000 products from Tesco.com, so you can get everything you need for less than you think. Should free up some budget for that emergency tub of ice cream. Ocado, the online supermarket. Max £10 voucher for difference on like-for-like shop. Valid 28 days. Excludes marketplace. Products may vary. Geographical restrictions, min spend and charges apply. Terms at ocado.com/price promise.
Visit thebirthdaydraw.com for a chance to win £1 million. Why should you enter? Hello? £1 million. In fact, the birthday draw is the only weekly draw where you can win £1 million for just £1. Enter before midnight on Sunday from as little as £1 or via post. Is it your lucky day? From Global and ITV.
T's and C's apply. 18 plus UK only. No purchase necessary. Verify at thebirthdaydraw.com/terms.
With over 50 years' experience, at Fidelity, we know the difference between investing and being invested. Investing is a transaction. Being invested is about the future you want to build. With our guidance, expert insights, and wealth of investment options, you can feel confident about your long-term goals. For ISAs, pensions, or advice, be invested with Fidelity. Go to fidelity.co.uk. Your capital is at risk. Terms apply.
Is your cat drinking enough? Discover Purina One Hydrolife and help support their daily hydration with a taste they'll enjoy. Purina One Hydrolife. Make it easy.
Iain Dale. Text 84850. This is LBC.
7:52. Olad says, I understand that you're not defending the Reform Party. However, I can't imagine you defending the Greens in the same way when callers say negative, exaggerated things about them. If someone sent a text in calling the Green Party anti-Semitic, sorry, I've lost my place here. Or when they accuse Labour of being controlled by Muslim voters. Well, I can remember a distinct occasion when I have defended Labour on that front. I haven't had cause to defend the Green Party because I don't recall ever people texting in or even saying in a phone call that they thought the Green Party was anti-Semitic. Just like Reform contains racists, the Green Party contains anti-Semitic people. We've seen the evidence for that. So I take the point, though, Olad. Let's go to Reyes in Raynham. Good evening. What would you like to tell me?
Good evening, Ian. I would like to talk about the West Street thing statement, the speech. Yes, I think he's not aided or abetted at all the division in the country, which I feel like is probably the most pressing issue. I think he's also misconstrued nationalism in the sense that he's confused it with isolationism, which while the two kind of come under the same umbrella, I think he's misnamed nationalism there. You can have nationalism and isolationism. We see it in Trump, but I think he's misaligned that. And he's also only contributed to the division in the UK with that speech. I think the division is the biggest problem. I don't think that nationalism is the biggest problem right now.
What do you think is the biggest problem?
Well, I have to say is the actual party, the whole political structure within the UK is suffering from quite clear division, and it's becoming slightly more radicalized as we see people are not getting happier. There's not more money in people's pockets, and people are not getting happier. So the division between people and parties is, through the identity politics that has been played, is only getting worse for us, and it will only get worse as long as the economic situation continues to tighten people's wallets and make them more scared for their life, for their well-being.
See, I wonder whether it is down to the economy or whether it is actually down to public discourse and social media and all of that, because I think that is fueling division.
I think you can have the division on social media, and it's obviously become very heated through certain ongoings internationally. But I think when you add the stress and the real impact that it has on people, I think that kind of only extremifies that actual effect. So I think
you've created a new word there.
Pardon?
I think you created a new word there.
Oh, maybe I have. You'll have to check me on that one.
No, I always like it when people do that. Riz, thank you very much indeed. We're nearly reaching the end of the hour, so I'm going to get a couple more people on. But Ben in Bristol says, I am by blood Irish, English, Scots and Welsh. But because of my London accent, I'm seen as English in those other parts of these islands. I sense myself a Londoner first and then European. Well, we all sense something first and something second. I would say that I'm English first, British second and European third. Joshua's in Birmingham. Hi, Joshua.
Hi, Ian. I just want to say a big sort of well done to Sam, who I thought was really, really eloquent, and I agreed with lots of the things he was saying, and he kind of touched on some of the areas I wanted to mention to you. I do think, with regard to Reform UK, you do have a bit of a blind spot, I have to say. I've listened to you for a long time on all matters Farage, and I kind of feel like, just on sheer volume of the amount of people in his party that are consistently being called out for bigotry, racism, sexism, you name it. It's several stories a day of newly elected representatives, old representatives, constantly being called out for racism and all different forms of bigotry.
And yet apparently the media gives Reform a free ride. I mean, you can't have it both ways.
Well,
because it's generally the media that call them out.
No, but the people who dig this stuff up, broadly speaking, are independent journalists. They're not necessarily the people who there's a TV channel that literally is known colloquially as Reform Television because it constantly
I agree.
Right. So when we're talking about media, it's the media with the loudest platform and in the most volume. There's way more right-wing media outlets and shows and panelists and guests all over the British media. So I do think they do have a skew. But look, for me, they're full of the worst of our country, and I'd say just on a proportional level, there'd be way more in Reform than any other party. So my question is, what is it about people who think the Nazis were visionaries that attracts them to Nigel Farage?
What's your evidence for that? I mean, that's an outrageous statement.
Well, that was literally last week. There was a report that one of their councillors...
Yeah, one of their councillors out of about 3,000 that they've got now.
Well, I just said to you, there's multiple stories coming out every single day. I'm sorry you don't see them.
Well, I do see them, and I take them seriously, because no political party wants people like that in their party. And generally, they have to go through a process, but they're then kicked out, which is exactly how it should be.
Yeah, but why are there so many more in Reform than any other party? Because if it was Labour, I'm pretty certain you'd be hearing about it every single day.
But just because there are lots of seemingly anti-Semitic people in Labour, I don't think the whole of the Labour Party is anti-Semitic.
Okay, so where are the daily reports of people coming out as
there's plenty of them in the Green Party over the past couple of months, aren't there?
I'm not here supporting the Green Party.
I'm not saying you are, but I'm just saying that you can't just sort of cherry pick people from Reform and then ignore the fact that other parties have these people as well.
It's not cherry picking, it's just counting. Simple. There's nothing.
Well, maybe you should count the Greens as well, because there are plenty of examples of their councillors who've been elected.
So we're doing whataboutery now. I'm not supportive of the Greens.
I'm not saying you are supporting the Greens, but you can't just pick on one party when all parties have their mavericks or idiots or evil people.
But we're talking about reform, though, with great respect to you, and we are talking about...
No, we're not, actually. We're talking about patriotism and nationalism, and Reform seems to have overtaken the discussion, but hey...
Well, on the patriotism and nationalism thing, look, as previous contributors have said, the SNP and Plaid have a very sort of progressive form of nationalism, and it's more about breaking away from their enemy, the English, more than it is about the kind of stuff that Nigel Farage is promoting, which is getting mass deportations. ICE on the streets of the UK. Can you imagine the bedlam of that?
Have you ever heard me say that I agree with that?
No, I've never heard you say that.
Good.
I'm not saying you have. I'm just saying that there's far, in closing, I just want to say that there's far more racism in Reform than any other party, and the numbers back me up on that.
All right, Joshua, thank you very much indeed for your call. Coming up in a moment, it is Wednesday's Cross Question. We have Jack Abbott, the Labour MP for Ipswich, Harriet Cross, Conservative MP for Gordon and Buchan, James Bloodworth, journalist and author, and Janet Daly, columnist for The Sunday Telegraph. They are here to answer your questions. The number to call, 0345 6060 973. You can WhatsApp us on that number. You can text 84850. And, of course, you can watch us on Global Player, the LBC app, and the LBC YouTube channel. In fact, you can watch the whole show that way, just in case you didn't know.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 8 o'clock, it's been confirmed 3 women whose bodies were recovered from the sea off Brighton Beach were sisters from Uxbridge in London. Jane Adatoro and Christina and Rebecca Walter were all in their 30s. LBC's correspondent Emma Corr has been reading a statement from their father.
No words, he says, can describe the pain of losing 3 daughters in the prime of their lives. He says the tragedy of losing all 3 of you has left an emptiness that words can't heal. There are days when the grief feels unbearable, yet I tightly hold the memories we share.
The MOD says Russian jets came close enough to an RAF spy plane over the Black Sea to disable its autopilot. The Defence Secretary John Healey's warned Moscow Britain won't be deterred. Fuel duty will be frozen until at least the end of the year to offset the cost of rising oil prices caused by the war in Iran. The government had planned to increase it by 1 pence per litre in September. And figures show inflation fell to 2.8% last month, driven by a reduction in the energy price cap. The rate had been 3.3% in March. In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed up 101 points at 10,432. The pound buys $1.34 and €1.15. LBC weather showers easing tonight with clear spells for central areas. Rain moving in from the west later, a low of 3 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Daryl Jackson.
Taking antibiotics when you don't need them puts you and your family at risk of a longer and more severe illness. Always take your doctor's advice. Search NHS antibiotics.
You saw me, walking along the beach. You watched me turn round the headland, and the tide, it cut me off. The rocks were wet, too wet to climb, so I panicked. But you didn't. You dialed 999 and asked for the Coast Guard.
Coast Guard.
And I just want to say, whoever you are, thank you.
In an emergency at the coast, call 999 and ask for the Coast Guard.
I'm a real snack monster. But Mum and Dad says all that munching isn't good for me. Around half the sugar we eat comes from unhealthy snacks and sugary drinks. If you want to change from a snack monster to a snack star, search Change for Life for loads of healthy snacking ideas.
This is LBC. from Global, leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale.
Hello and welcome to Wednesday's Cross Question with me, Iain Dale. On the panel with me tonight, to my left, Harriet Cross, Conservative MP for Gordon and Buchan. Next to her, Jack Abbott, Labour MP for Ipswich. To my right, James Bloodworth, journalist and author. And to his right, Janet Daly, columnist for the Sunday Telegraph. If you'd like to ask them a question, the number to call 0345 6060 973. You can text 84850, and we'd love you to watch us on Global Player, the LBC app, or the LBC YouTube channel.
Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Cross Question. Watch live on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Right, let's take a text question from Ozzy. Is it the responsibility of shops to make sure most people can still afford to buy vital products like bread and milk? Now, the background to this, supermarket bosses, including the chief executive of Marks & Spencer, have hit out at the government after it called for supermarkets to freeze the prices of staple food and drink products, including bread, eggs, cheese and milk. In Scotland, the SNP-run government intends to go ahead with mandatory caps on the prices of such products. James Bloodworth, let's start with you.
I mean, I don't think the Labour government in England has proposed any kind of Soviet-style price caps on items of goods. It's been a case of they've offered advice to supermarkets to say, I mean, consider the fact that a lot of people are going through a cost of living crisis, and for many people, the basics of everyday life are becoming unaffordable, and I don't think that's necessarily wrong to say that. I mean, I think people are struggling at the moment.
But the question is it the responsibility of shops to make sure that people can still afford to buy?
I mean, that's a bigger moral question. I mean, no, I mean it's a responsibility of government, you could say, to try and ensure that people do have the basics. And I think part of this advice to the supermarkets is in that vein.
But surely the welfare state does that. I mean, the benefit system is there to help people who fall on hard times to afford the basics of life.
But we don't know how bad it's going to get with the war in Iran at the moment. We see, we haven't really experienced the knock-on effects of the increasing prices of oil and gas, for example. And I think, when you have the chief executive of Marks & Spencer calling it preposterous to even give supermarkets advice. I mean, he earns $7 million a year he was paid last year. I think, fair enough, he's not going to understand the cost of living crisis, but I think a lot of people are. And I think, the attacks on Labour saying this, I think they're being misconstrued. They're assuming that Labour are kind of imposing this on supermarkets, which I think is untrue. It's
the SNP are, aren't they?
And Reform and the Tories supported the war in Iran, which is the main reason why prices...
Not true, is it? That isn't true.
They said that Britain should have gone in with the United States. They thought it was a brilliant... Yeah,
for about 60 seconds.
Everybody supports it before.
I think
hang on. Now, this isn't going to work if all of you speak at the same time. Harriet, go on.
Thank you. I think just to put the record straight there, I think what actually happened was Kemi Badenoch said that the government should allow the Americans, our allies, to use our bases, a position which Keir Starmer then adopted a few days later.
That wasn't what she said.
That is what happened.
She thought we should have gone with
RAF were just hanging around.
You're now answering a totally different question. So let's stick to is it the responsibility of shops to make sure most people can still afford to buy vital products like bread and milk? Janet Daly.
No is the answer to that. The reason that these items are so expensive is a great deal to do with government policy. They have made employing people very much more expensive. They have made expenses for all businesses much higher, and they have added to the farmers' costs, which means the cost of food is much higher. So the responsibility for those very high prices isn't actually the supermarket's fault, who are very, very competitive. We have a very competitive supermarket industry in this country. And one of the reasons that these directors and what these people earn themselves is neither here nor there. That's not pertinent to this question. The reason they're so furious is because they have had to increase their prices because their costs have increased so much. And that is the direct responsibility of the government. So for the government then to turn to the supermarkets and say, you must lower your prices, or you're morally obliged to lower your prices, is bizarre. It's absolutely hypocritical.
Jack?
I think there's a bit of sensationalism, if I'm totally honest. I mean, all this talk of a cap, all this talk of the government demanding or enforcing certain things is frankly rubbish. There has been actually no intervention. But I also think it'd be...
But there is in Scotland.
But we're not talking about Scotland.
No, but
we're talking about the UK
from the
government.
newspaper stories that I've read today, there are people within the government, I don't know who they are because there's no quotes on any of these stories, who seem to think, well, the SNP have stolen a march on us, maybe we should do that in England too.
I don't think that's the case. And I think that's sensationalism. I don't think that's actually been talked about whatsoever. The SNP and how they run the Scottish government is for them. I disagree that a cap would be wrong, but I also think it's a responsible government that has a conversation, that has a two-way conversation with supermarkets to see if there are ways we can hold or even reduce costs on essentials. People have been hurting a long time when it comes to the cost of living. It's almost wrong to call it a crisis because this has lasted a number of years now. So I think it's really important that the government does have those conversations. As I say, two-way conversations about how supermarkets may be able to hold those prices for those essentials, whether it's bread, milk or eggs or whatever it might be. I think that's an important thing to do. So I think it's really important not to be too sensationalist about it.
It is bizarre that this story has come out on the day that inflation has unexpectedly gone down. Because, Janet and I remember the days of 25% inflation. Then there really was a cost of living crisis. But you've got wages edging slightly ahead of inflation at the moment. You've got inflation down to 2.8%. Some people will say, probably people who are reasonably well off, say, well, how can this be a cost of living crisis? If a real cost of living crisis is when inflation is in double digits.
Well, look, you're absolutely right to say there's been some positive signs in the economy announced over the last couple of weeks. The economy grew much more than expected, 0.6% in the first quarter of this year, even when the war was beginning. That's the fastest rate in the G7. Obviously, we've had repeated interest rate cuts as well. And you're also right to say that interest rates falling to 2.8% is good. But as you've also heard today, inflation has fallen to 2.8%. But also,
hopefully interest rates will too.
Yeah, well, look, the other thing as well, and I'm sure we'll get onto this, is there is a package of intervention, whether it's fuel duty, road tax exemptions for haulage companies as well, because we also know the headwinds of this war in Iran are still going to be affecting the country, and so it's good that the government is being proactive in this area to offer targeted support in the right places as well. And so to have those two-way conversations with supermarkets or any other kind of trade bodies, I think is an important one.
Harriet Cross.
I think, just picking on that last point, I think the issue is too often these conversations are not two-way, they are one-way, and it's the government very much telling businesses what's going to happen. I do find it incredible that the government have decided to take lessons from the SNP government in Scotland, but they think introducing a price cap
but
is...
Well, to be fair, they haven't actually announced this as a policy.
They haven't. It's been mooted. But why is it being mooted? We've seen the Treasury fly a lot of kites over the last few years. It is one thing
Never happened
they
under
do.
the Conservatives, did it?
Well, I can't imagine it would have. No, but we have seen, as I say, a lot of kites being flown. Mm-hmm. Some things happen, some things don't, and it is a method that is used to see how things land. This landed incredibly badly for a very obvious reason. It would be the businesses that suffer. It'd be farmers providing them, supplying the businesses that suffer. And the government have to ask themselves, actually, why is it that prices are rising? There are external factors, of course, but there are also factors that the government have implemented. The huge increase in national insurance, the Employment Rights Bill, the huge amount of extra bureaucracy, all of these have a cost. And the government don't seem to realise that regulation, bureaucracy, making employing people more important, increasing business rates, this is all a cost on business. It has to be absorbed or it has to be accrued from somewhere else. And businesses can't just run on goodwill. It doesn't exist. They have to put their prices up if their costs have gone up. And that is just how the world of business works.
And trying to shame the supermarkets, trying to imply that they're failing in their social duty, their moral duty to society, when the costs have become so, the encumbrances of those extra costs have borne down so heavily. And the supermarket, as I say, the supermarket industry is incredibly competitive.
But just go back to this point. Look, I absolutely front up. We have asked more of businesses, but you have to look at the reasons why.
I haven't asked more.
We have. But if I can finish,
it wasn't an ask.
Well, we have to ask more of businesses, and the reason we've done that is to put investment in our public services. Because if you look at, for example, our workforce, we had one of the sickest workforces in Europe when we came into government, about 8 million people on the waiting list. We've invested in the NHS. There's a big complaint, for example, the last Conservative government dried up investment into infrastructure. We've increased infrastructure spending by about 120 billion. There's also complaints that there wasn't enough technical skills training coming through the pipeline. All of that has to be paid for. So yes, we've asked more of businesses because we want to make sure that the country is healthy healthier, able to get back to work, more productive. We're training them properly. And yes, I don't apologise for wanting much more secure, skilled, well-paid work in our country, because that is something that Conservatives
Why have we decided to do that by taxation as opposed to by savings?
Well, this is all part of the round. We can't go back to what Liz Truss did and just make imaginary spending commitments. We have to make sure that everything's paid for. So, as I say, I front up to the fact that we've asked more businesses, but they, in return, will get a much healthier workforce. They'll get a much more skilled workforce, and ultimately that everyone benefits from that.
If it costs more to employ people because you have to pay a higher national insurance, you have to pay them more because you've increased the minimum wage. If it costs more to employ people, you're going to employ fewer people. That's how business works. And if you employ fewer people, there are fewer people paying tax, and you get less income, and you restrict economic growth. That is just the logic.
That's not what we're seeing, though.
But you don't need an economics degree to understand that.
The economy was actually growing, and it has been growing up to the Iran war. And I mean, the people who work for these supermarkets actually need to live as well. The people who work in these supermarkets on the minimum wage, they actually have to buy things and live as well.
Which is why it's important that these businesses can make a profit.
They are making. Look, if you look at a price of eggs in Sainsbury's, it's £1. It's about £1.40. If you look at the price of eggs the same price of eggs in Asda is 99p.
Exactly.
So some of these supermarkets do have. Some of these supermarkets do have margins. It's not like they have no margin. The idea that it costs an extra 50% for a tray of eggs in Sainsbury's, I mean, they can be told that maybe you do need to consider that some of your customers are struggling right now. I don't see anything wrong with that. It's not being imposed on them. It's a piece of advice.
Sainsbury's pay their staff more, and that's because they charge more for their products. So would you rather that they paid the staff less and charged less for the product? I mean, what is the logic of this argument?
But they're not on them. They're making lots and lots of money every year. I mean, the chief execs are paid millions every year. The idea that they're just on the breadline and struggling, and if the government,
what a handful of chief executives earn is neither here nor there.
Well, it is here because that's the money that comes out of the profits that the supermarket's making. So it is relevant, I think.
I think also what's bizarre in this context as well is there's this idea that the economy was some sort of panacea over 2 years ago. It's absolute rubbish. If you look at the rise in food banks, for example, and this isn't just people on welfare. This is working people working full-time in things like social care, teaching assistant, nurses, etc. They're going to food banks because they weren't paid enough. If you look at the huge rise in child...
That's happening in every country.
But that doesn't mean we say, oh, well, we just forget about it.
No, I'm not saying it is, but sometimes we think we're the only country that has them.
I don't think it's that case, but then let's do something about it. I don't see that going, oh, well, other countries also have a problem with child poverty, so maybe we shouldn't be that bothered about it.
Actually,
if I can just finish this point, if I may.
If you fund all that.
You do, and we had economic growth. We had the fastest economic growth in the G7 for the first 3 months of this year. We've seen inflation falling. We've seen interest rates being cut repeatedly. So it shows actually the vital signs of the economy are actually reasonably good. But also we can't do this race to the bottom sort of economy that we had before, because like take about my town centre, for example. The reason town centres have been decimated is, yes, a change in shopping habits to a degree, but it's also people can't afford to go and shop in the shops because they've had wages flatlined over the last decade or so, while the cost of everything absolutely went through the roof, including energy, which I'm sure we'll get onto. We have to make sure we've got an economy that literally works for people, where they're secure, they're skilled, they're well paid. And I won't accept this sort of race to the bottom, ignore the kind of massive, deep-rooted problems that face so many
210,000 people fewer employed at the moment than there was when Labour came to power. Over 200,000 fewer people in employment. Those people are not out spending the economy. Those people are not out contributing to the economy. They're not out paying their taxes. They're wondering how they're going to get by. And it's not a coincidence that a huge spike in unemployment came after the government made it more expensive to employ people.
Right, we do have to move on before I make a derogatory remark about Ipswich Town Centre, which Jack won't like. It's 17 minutes past 8.
Don't you dare, Ian.
Weekdays from 7 a.m.
We honestly believe that he didn't know.
Straight to the point.
Has this country become almost ungovernable?
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
Where there should be vision, there is a vacuum.
Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app. Download it now from your app store. LBC.
McDonald's breakfast is turning up the heat with a spicy new twist. Calm down, not that spicy. Breakfast is for savouring, not suffering. Introducing McDonald's breakfast with Frank's Red Hot Ketchup. A spicy breakfast, suitable for the morning. Until 8th of June, served until 11 a.m, subject to availability.
Take Irish ferries from Dover to Calais, where your pet travels in the pet lounge. You'll be barking not to. Irish ferries. See travel differently.
The Hillary's mid-season sale is on, with up to 40% off hundreds of made-to-measure styles. Plus, for a limited time only, there's a huge extra 15% off everything, including our stylish garden pergolas with free expert installation, perfect for summer. Don't forget, with Hillary's, measuring and fitting is always included. So get window-wise and book your free in-home appointment today at hillarys.co.uk. But hurry, the extra 15% off ends the 1st of June. Conditions apply.
If you bought a home on a holiday park in the UK, what you thought you were getting may not be what you ended up with. From unexpected site fee increases, running costs, a huge depreciation in value, many owners feel they've been missold. If you think this might be you, holidayparkadvicecentre.co.uk could help you receive the compensation you're entitled to. Text ASSIST to 78900 to find out more. That's ASSIST to 78900.
Cross Question with Iain Dale. Watch live on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
90 minutes past 8. We have a very feisty panel tonight. Jack Abbott is Labour MP for Ipswich, Harriet Cross, Conservative MP for Gordon and Buchan, which is the bit sort of around Aberdeen, isn't it?
It is. It's to the north and to the west of Aberdeen, yes.
Marvellous. James Budworth is here, journalist and author. Have you got a book out at the moment? Last time we talked, you had a new book out.
Yes, the same book is out now in paperback, Lost Boys, in all good bookshops and bad ones too. And it doesn't make a difference because I still get the royalties.
Right, Janet Daly is a columnist for the Sunday Telegraph. Right, text question from Will. Should individual donations to politicians be made illegal to protect democracy? Now, meanwhile, Russell in Connors Quay asks, is it right that one foreign-based crypto billionaire can bankroll a political party potentially into power? Is that democracy? Well, I think we all know who Russell is talking about there. Janet, let's start with you.
Well, I don't think you can bankroll a party into office, because that's up to the electorate. But there is certainly, well, I don't know how much I can say legally. I mean, there is certainly something very unpleasant about the idea of personal gifts being given to the leader of a party, which then becomes unaccountable in the larger political sense. That is.
We should point out, and I know I'm going to be accused of speaking up for Nigel Farage here, but he wasn't actually leader of the party when that $5 million gift was given.
That's true. That's true. Okay, let's leave that one for legal reasons. The point is that there is the business of funding political parties is controversial in almost every democratic society. It is in America too, and there's a real problem in this country. At least we don't have the really significant problem that America has, where it costs a fortune to run a campaign. It's very rare that anybody who isn't privately wealthy runs for president in the United States for that reason. Here you don't have to buy television time and for political party advertising, but there is something distinctly unpleasant about the personal nature of this, the idea that it's an individual person giving money to another individual person who just happens to be end up running a political party. And they're really, I don't think that it's undue pressure that's being put on this. I think it's quite appropriate that this should be so contentious and controversial.
I mean, in a sense, it is different because it was given to the individual. But if we go back nearly 30 years now, Michael Ashcroft gave £5 million to the Tories when William Hague was the leader. And if he hadn't done that, the Conservative Party would actually have probably gone out of existence because it would have been bankrupt. So I'm not defending it, but I mean, sometimes these things.
But an upfront subsidy of a political party, donating to a political party because presumably you believe in it, you support it, and it's all open and available for examination is quite a different thing.
That is true.
From a personal gift from one individual to another.
Jack Abbott, do you think that the law needs to be changed here?
Well, it's certainly what we're looking to do when we're talking about sort of big international donations. There's a big concern, obviously, about crypto, and this is, should we say, overlapping in this particular case that we're talking about. And look, I'm not going to get on my high horse about political donations. All parties do depend on them to a degree. I agree to a degree with Janet, is that they don't necessarily make or break elections, but clearly the amount of spend you've got on the ground, whether it's your paid for leaflets going through the door, and we saw an awful lot of those, but actually quite perniciously a lot of online spending now as well, and I think there's going to be concerns. I think the difficulty some people, fellow colleagues right across the chamber will have is obviously when we come into office, and Harriet will remember this, you have to declare absolutely everything that had been donated to your party, right? Not even to you personally, but let's say there's a donation towards your campaign, even sponsoring a business event or whatever it is, you have to declare everything 12 months prior to entering office alone. The difficulty with this was this is £5 million, I mean, an eye-watering sum of money made to an individual only a few months before he entered Parliament, and he didn't... £5 million before he entered Parliament, plus an extra 12 million that was given to the reform. And you have to wonder, well, what was that, just out of some sort of charity? I mean, the line has also changed repeatedly here as well. I think it started off, I needed it for my security. Now it was a gift for delivering Brexit, I think was one of the other lines.
Well, would you like a gift for being part of a government that's cut interest rates 4 or 5 times? I mean, it's a very slippery slope, this, isn't it? When politicians think it's acceptable to take a gift for something that their party or they have achieved.
Well, I mean, it's a slight bizarre one as well, because he wasn't even in government at the time. So it's an odd thing.
No, I think we can all agree Brexit wouldn't have happened without it.
The other point I was going to come on to as well, and look, again, is the issue around second jobs. Well, Farage is about, 11, 12 second jobs, as it were. He makes...
No need to be jealous. Very ugly traits.
Hey, look, good work if you can get it. But look, I represent Ipswich. I don't see him a lot in the chamber. He wasn't in the chamber again today. He very rarely is. He barely ever turns up for votes. He's rarely in Clacton. So you have to think, well, how is he getting 7-figure sums, essentially, as well as being an MP? I know the hours I put into it. I'm sure Harriet puts into it. It's not a jealousy thing. You were elected, as Janet says. Well, I'm sure we were, but hey, like as Janet says, you're elected to do your job, and I cannot understand how anybody...
But isn't that up to the good voters of Clacton to decide on that?
It absolutely will be, but I think, as Janet said, it stinks, to be quite frank. And I think people will think, whether it's the £5 million donated just a few months before he was elected that he didn't declare, or the 7-figure sums that he's raking in now he is an MP, I think it sits incredibly uncomfortably with a lot of people.
Harriet?
I agree with a lot of that. A big issue here.
The uni-party strikes again.
Uni-parties, what are they like?
You've been very chippy tonight, Ian.
No, it's not a uni-party thing at all. Thanks, Ian, that's helpful. No, but it's a transparency thing, isn't it? And I think what people care more about is that they don't think that their politicians are in anyone's pockets. That's what this comes down to, really. And the way in which that is safeguarded against as much as possible, as Jack outlined, is the rules and procedures, which are boring. We all know what rules and procedures are not sort of what gets people up in the morning, but they're there for a reason. And it is so that there is accountability, transparency, and people know where money's come from and they know who is behind it. The issue is when it becomes murky. Where has it come from? Why is it being paid? Why is it not declared in some places? And what is the expectation in return? And that's the big question. If something's not declared, it's very then hard to link the bits together as far as, okay, this money came from here and now X, Y, and Z questions, for example, are being asked. But if we don't know where that money came from to begin with, or that it came at all, it's very hard then to join those dots. So we do want answers from any politician of, okay, who is either funding them, donating to them, hosting them. Like there's loads of different ways in which I think we can all be honest that lobbying happens, and donations is effectively a form of lobbying. This all happens, and it's just making sure that one, a politician can actually recognise when it's happening to them, because I think sometimes people are quite naive. Secondly, that when they are very certain it's happening, but they know that they're either going to declare it and they have to declare it. And thirdly, that actually the public can actually see where this money's coming from, whose it's coming from, and how it's actually going to be used, and if it's impacting their job.
Most politicians, in my experience, they're very nervous about donations. I mean, they declare them, but then in a way, if the donation was made because they wanted something in return, the politician generally will be very careful not to mention that party. But of course, Nigel Farage, James Bloodworth, hasn't done this because he was on LBC in September last year extolling the virtues of Christopher Harborne's cryptocurrency company, which, I mean, does leave a nasty taste.
Yeah, I mean, certainly when it comes to crypto, I mean, the whole point of crypto is that it is opaque and it is out of this normal regulatory framework. And I think this area of donations is another example of where the regulatory framework has to catch up with a changed world. I mean, you could look at that on the one hand with foreign actors trying to influence politics in the UK or elsewhere by making big donations, and crypto especially. I think, I don't think it's wrong for individuals to donate to political parties or political causes, but I think most of us would think it's wrong if a huge donation comes in from abroad and it's in cryptocurrency, because the average person, when they apply for a mortgage or something, they have to show where the funds have come from, and the whole point of crypto is that it doesn't leave that kind of doesn't show that trail of where the money's come from. And I think that's very problematic.
To be entirely factual, we should point out that Christopher Harborne is a British citizen, but he's also a Thai citizen and actually has a Thai name as well, which is very exotic. I shouldn't have made that comment about Ipswich because I'm now getting people texting saying, Iain, I live in Stowmarket, 10 miles from Ipswich. No, I can't say. He doesn't say Ipswich. He says something very derogatory.
Oh, good. Yeah, thank you.
He says, please, can I have your thoughts on this town? Pretty please. I've never been to Stowmarket, so I'm afraid I can't oblige there. But several of you are also pointing out that apparently Asda do pay higher wages than Sainsbury's. So there we go.
Do they employ fewer people?
I don't know.
I think they're a bigger company because it was
international.
Walmart, wasn't it?
But and it's international.
I'm not sure.
Anyway, more subjects to cover in just a moment. It's 8:30 on LBC. Daryl Jackson has the news headlines.
It's been revealed 3 women whose bodies were recovered from the sea off Brighton Beach last week were sisters. They've been identified as Jane Adatoro and Christina and Rebecca Walter, who were all in their 30s. A murder investigation has begun after a bus driver died following an assault on Battersea Bridge in London on Monday. The victim's been named as 64-year-old Sergei Krajev. And a 5p cut in fuel duty introduced 4 years ago will continue until at least the end of the year. The government says it will be held as part of efforts to offset the rising cost of oil prices caused by the war in Iran. LBC weather, showers easing tonight with clear spells for central areas. Rain moving in from the west later, a low of 3 degrees.
This is LBC.
Now, focus on your car. That's right, the one you're ready to sell. See it clearly in your mind, waiting to be sold. We can make it disappear. Just watch carefully. Your car sold, collected and paid for in almost no time at all. It's not magic, it's motorway. Sell your car today at motorway.co.uk.
Dear passengers, this is the final boarding call for all those whose minds are already elsewhere. Taking in the skyline of Hong Kong, feeling the energy of Mumbai, walking the historic streets of Boston, or heading out on safari near Johannesburg.
Wherever your mind is right now, we'll take you there. Discover the world with Swiss. Book your flight on swiss.com.
Here's a tale of 2 commuters. Steve was in a rush and needed to park near the station. Jane also needed a space and booked in advance with Your Parking Space. Steve had a meeting at 9 and panic at 8. Nowhere to park. Jane, she's already in the office and enjoying that morning latte. With Your Parking Space, you can browse thousands of spaces across London and reserve one instantly. Use the code GET10 for £10 off your first booking. Download the Your Parking Space app today.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC.
8:32 on LBC. Someone's texted in to say, you have my loyalty forever. Not quite sure what that was brought that about, but there we are. Our panel tonight consists of the Labour MP for Ipswich, Jack Abbott, the beautiful town of Ipswich.
Thank you. I will be replying in force in a moment.
OK. Harriet Cross is Conservative MP for the even more beautiful constituency of Gordon and Buchan. James Bloodworth doesn't have a constituency, but he might do in the future. You never know.
Don't know about that.
Oh, that wasn't a denial, was it? And Janet Daly is columnist for the Sunday Telegraph. Ever been tempted by politics, Janet?
Oh, I have much more power where I am.
Influence, maybe. Right, a text question from Janie in Coshalton. Is nationalism a threat to a peaceful society? Wes Streeting told MPs today that the government is in the fight of our lives against nationalism, adding that it is currently losing. He contrasted nationalism and patriotism as two very different and distinct sets of ideals, arguing that patriotism is not about who you exclude, it's about who you stand beside. Jack, let's start with you. Were you in the chamber for that?
I wasn't in the chamber, but I did pick up the speech. And look, I think Wes's analysis in places is absolutely right. Of course, nationalism is always a threat. We've seen that throughout history. And we are seeing, and we have felt, a much more divided society. I was I felt the responsibility on my shoulders when I came into my post in Ipswich in 2024 very keenly. I've got to be really honest. I think my predecessor was someone who looked to divide communities, who preyed on malaise as an opportunity to find their own way through instead of bringing people together and lowering the temperature. That's something I've tried to do locally as well, but I'm under absolutely no illusion about the threat we are facing from the far right. We saw Tommy Robinson, of all people. He's not a patriot. He is a nationalist. He's far right. He's got criminal convictions. He's not someone I think we should be following as a country. And I'm very, very afraid, as I mentioned earlier on, about what we see online as well. I clicked on a Facebook post the other day out of curiosity. And for days, if not weeks afterwards, I was bombarded with very subtle but very clearly far-right propaganda, clearly targeting certain people, feeding them.
They picked the wrong man, didn't they?
Well, they did. I mean, that's a clear sign the algorithms weren't working on that particular day. But it also shows that how dangerous this is, how subtle it is, how it is entering our bloodstream as a society.
But doesn't nationalism mean different things to different people? Because nationalism in Wales and Scotland seems to be acceptable in a way that it isn't in England.
But I think what we're talking about here is something much deeper. Patriotism, absolutely. People will be going into the pubs wearing the England football shirts this year, and that's patriotism. Patriotism is helping your neighbours, bringing you together, joining people, going through the back door and borrowing some sugar and things like that, like helping people down the street. That is not what it is. Shouting and screaming at people, intimidating them, saying that your point of view is right, is incredibly dangerous. And we heard a little bit of some of the callers before we came on, Ian. But being proud and being patriotic are, of course, incredibly important things. And sport has the opportunity to unify, but I think politics has to as well. And look, I am very, very aware of the fact that, and I say I feel this responsibility. I'm not afraid of reform. I'm not afraid of 2029. But what I am afraid of is that we haven't made a big enough difference to people's lives, whether it's in their pockets or in the economy and in public services as well. I'm passionate about my home. I want it to get better. I want it to give people opportunity and hope. That's my sort of patriotism and pride.
Harriet.
Yeah, I find this a really difficult one, actually. And maybe it's because living in Scotland, being a Scottish MP, being in Scotland during the independence referendum in 2014, and everyone in Scotland since then, and before in a lot of cases, being defined as either a nationalist or a unionist. And they're the two categories. And I don't look at people who are in the nationalist camp in Scotland and see them as a threat in any way at all. I don't. I see them as people who I vehemently disagree with, but I also see them as very proud of their country and wanting the best for their country. And they see nationalism as the root to that. I strongly disagree. I strongly see Scotland being the strongest it possibly can be and central to a strong United Kingdom. So I do agree with what Ian said about nationalism meaning different things in different parts of the country. And there is, I think, if you look at nationalism, what are people actually, why are they displaying nationalism or being nationalist, however you wanted to say it? Is it because they want to cause aggro, or is it because they sort of want to sort of attack other people? I'm not sure it is. I think it's because they are deeply proud of where they come from. They want the best of where they come from. They feel, for whatever reason, that there's a threat to what they hold dear. And that is then exploited and shown in different ways. Some bad, some questionable, some good. So I think it's really too basic just to say nationalism bad.
James?
I think Wes was right in the sense that it's important to distinguish between patriotism and nationalism. I think patriotism is love for one's country, love for one's community, love for the traditions of one's country, whereas nationalism it thrives on division. It thrives on creating scapegoats. It thrives on chauvinism. Thrives on this idea that we are superior to other people based on arbitrary characteristics like the colour of their skin, for example. And I think nationalists espouse this very simple message that, there's some of the problems we face in this country, some of the kind of decline there's been in certain communities in this country. This has occurred because of foreigners, because of Europe, because of minorities hoarding all of the treasure or whatever. Whereas I think patriotism is about coming together and fixing those problems together and not making these arbitrary distinctions where we attack people based on their religion or the colour of their skin, or using things like Islam as a scapegoat and Muslims as a scapegoat.
Janet.
Nationalism is completely different from national pride, and national pride is completely acceptable, and it includes people. It includes a community and creates a community out of people who just happen to be living within the borders of one country. What we're calling nationalism here is bigotry. It's racism. It's just a cover for hatred of the outsider, hatred of the immigrant. I feel that very strongly because I come from an immigrant family. My father didn't speak English until he went to school. I recognize what is disguising itself as a kind of nationalist fervor, as nothing other than the kind of bigotry that tore Europe apart a century ago. This is not in any way, there's no apologia for that kind of supposed nationalism, which is actually bigotry. And one of the reasons that I dislike the parties under the various names that Nigel Farage has led is because he turned Brexit into a bigot's charter. My reason for supporting Brexit was absolutely straightforward. You should elect the people who make your laws. That was my objection to membership of the EU. It had nothing to do with disliking immigrants or not wanting people from another country to be living in my country or having freedom of movement. That was not a problem for me. And I really loathe the way those two things have been confounded in this argument about being in the European Union or being out of the European Union. It should not be about hating people from other cultures or other countries.
Quite right. Let's spend a couple of minutes talking about Wes Streeting himself. Those of you who saw this speech today or read it or whatever, did it sound like the speech of a future Prime Minister, Harriet?
I was actually in the chamber for the speech. And it was a well-delivered speech. There's no doubt about that. I mean, everyone I think can agree that Wes Streeting is a very good communicator. Was it the speech of a future leader? There was a lot of words in it, and there was but I don't know how much sort of detail was behind it. I think it was quite high level, a lot of sort of vision, but you need a wee bit more than vision.
It wasn't Sir Geoffrey Howe, was it?
It wasn't, and it wasn't certain others either.
It's an interesting comparison.
It was...
well, they were both resignation speeches.
I think that's probably the only two things that binds them. But
well, no, apart from the fact they both want to see the back of the current Prime Minister.
Yeah, I think what we can say about the speech is it certainly had more thoughts in it than many speeches we've heard in the chamber recently. But it started by basically saying that the government that Wes Streeting has sat in for the last almost 2 years has got everything wrong other than subscript the health department, which apparently is all going great guns. That's how the speech started. And if Wes Streeting thinks that he's the answer, then how much influence does he really have if he's sat round a cabinet table for almost 2 years and has not been able to change the direction of anything other than the department he was in? That's not, to me, as a strong potential leader or a strong member of a cabinet. That's someone who sits there quietly, maybe does or does not get on with his own thing. I know there has been some questions about actually, say, reductions in waiting lists if they've actually been people taking off. But he's not someone who I believe, and I've never spoken to Wes Streeting, so I'm saying this completely from afar.
Don't know what you missed.
Don't know what I've missed. Don't know what he's missed. But he certainly held the room, but I'm not sure if he'd hold many rooms up too often.
Jack, now you're a Starmer should stay MP, aren't you?
I am. Look, I've got enormous respect for Wes, and as Harriet said, a fantastic communicator, supremely talented politician. I have no doubt he'll be back in the front line of politics soon. You're not going to keep a talent like that down for long. But funny enough, I was at UK Reef yesterday, a big investment conference, and almost universally people were saying, please, not again. And I said this last week when I was talking to the media as well, is you only have to look over your shoulders to where the Conservatives got themselves into this merry-go-round of prime ministers, chancellors, housing ministers, energy ministers, and we wonder why things didn't work when we came into government. A lot of that is because you completely lose any sort of political grip or direction. And we're less than 2 years into this government. We went from one of our worst electoral defeats in history to one of the biggest landslides we've seen in this country. And, we've talked about some of the vital signs looking quite good in the economy. Obviously, the health service making huge cuts to waiting lists there as well. Big investment and reform in key areas like employment rights, renters' rights, etc. Now, I fully appreciate, and we were one of the places which had a really tough evening when it came to the local election results. I have to say the Conservatives on the county council had an even tougher evening. And so I'm not saying everything is rosy and we continue how we are, but equally a chop and change, instability, it would just be, I think, be absolutely disastrous, not just for our party, by the way, but the country.
Just to back you up on that, I was doing a podcast this afternoon with City AM. And the guy that was interviewing me said that they haven't come across a single senior executive in the city that wants a change in Prime Minister for exactly the reasons that you articulated. James?
I think that's probably true. I mean, I think it's a moot point in terms of Wes Streeting's leadership prospects, because I don't think there is enough support in the Labour Party for him to actually win a leadership contest. I think. Do
you think he knows that?
Andy Burnham could possibly win if he stands. I think that's likely. He would win if he challenged Keir Starmer, but I think Keir Starmer would win out over Wes Streeting. Maybe Wes Streeting knows that, but I mean, he is a good communicator. I think his speech today, I think Labour should take something from it, in that Keir Starmer's Labour Party is going down the path of where Joe Biden went, where they're pursuing these policies which many on the left should be very happy with. Rail nationalisation, the NHS waiting times are down. You've seen the Renters' Rights Bill, which is more radical than anything governments have brought in for decades. But there isn't a story stitching things together. I mean, there isn't. It's very piecemeal. It's very technocratic. There isn't that kind of moral vision about what kind of country the Labour Party wants to create. And I think Wes did touch on that in his speech today. I mean, you could say the speech was light on, what he would actually do in power. But I think what Labour is lacking at the moment is that kind of moral vision for the kind of country it wants to create, how it wants us to relate to each other, how we should engage with our communities, and this kind of bigger vision that I think New Labour, for all its flaws, actually Blair was actually quite good at articulating that.
Janet?
But that's because they don't know who they represent anymore. There was a time, pre-Blair, when the Labour Party had become, and it evolved from being the political wing of the trades union movement, and it knew that it represented its conception of working class people. Now, there are lots of different kinds of working class people now whom they are not addressing. They're not addressing the Thatcherite working class, the aspirational working class. They think they're still talking effectively to what used to be called the organised working class, which is to say the trades unions. But most of the trades unions now are middle class. They're junior doctors or they're teachers. Many of the most militant unions, in fact, are middle class, not working class. The working class people they're not talking to are the white van men, the people who make who are tradesmen, who are self-employed tradesmen, who are trying to make a living and having to remove Just Stop Oil protesters off the road so that they can drive to their jobs with their vans. Those people, Labour has completely disowned. The people who are genuinely determined to build their own lives, build their own businesses, own their own homes. That was the great Thatcher discovery, was that there was this whole contingent of working class people who didn't want to stay where they were and be looked after by a government, who wanted to get on and up and out, and they wanted their children to get out. Now, who's talking for them? If Labour isn't talking to them, they're going to end up voting for Nigel Farage, which is exactly what's happening. Those are the reform votes. Those are the working class people whom Labour has abandoned.
Well, that was a slightly lengthier discussion on Wes Streeting than I was anticipating, but entertaining nonetheless. We'll come to some more questions in a moment. It's 8:47.
LBC. At John Lewis Money, we know your home is more than an address. It's the sunlight pouring in. Well, sometimes. The coffee on tap and the best spot on the sofa. It's why our home insurance is thoughtfully designed with 3 levels of flexible cover for the home you've created. Because when you notice the details, you notice the difference. Search John Lewis Money. Terms and exclusions apply. John Lewis Finance Limited is authorised for insurance distribution and credit broking by the Financial Conduct Authority.
For unbeatable prices on printer ink and toner, more people are switching to cartridgepeople.com. Like Max, whose kids have discovered printable colouring sheets. And now, there's no going back. And Jen, a business owner who wants printer cartridges so economical, she can print herself a pay rise. For unbeatable prices on printer ink and toner, switch to cartridgepeople.com. T's and C's apply. See online for our price promise.
A spectacle far beyond your imagination. Be amazed. Be moved. Be there. For an experience that will stay with you forever. Disney's The Lion King at London's Lyceum Theatre. Book now at thelionking.co.uk.
The Hillary's mid-season sale is on, with up to 40% off hundreds of made-to-measure styles. Plus, for a limited time only, there's a huge extra 15% off everything, including our stylish garden pergolas with free expert installation, perfect for summer. Don't forget, with Hillary's, measuring and fitting is always included. So get window-wise and book your free in-home appointment today at hillarys.co.uk. But hurry, the extra 15% off ends the 1st of June. Conditions apply.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
8:49. We have with us Jack Abbott MP, Harriet Cross MP, James Bloodworth and Janet Daly. Michael in Swindon says, I've always been Tory and my partner has always been Labour. Has any of the panel ever had a relationship with somebody of opposing views? We do not agree on everything, but we do try to be civil. Well, that's nice. With how polarising politics has been in the country lately, is the practice of cross-party relationships a thing of the past? James.
I have had relationships and friendships with people who lean more right than left before, and I think that's I think it's depressing the fact that that conversation even comes up in some ways. I think you should be able to have. I have a firewall if someone has a very very extreme views. You know, I if someone was racist, I would try and at least speak to them, and maybe I'd break off the friendship if that continued. But I think, no, you should absolutely be able to be friends with, as someone on the left with a constitutional conservative, as it were. I think that's healthy. I think we need to have that in a democracy.
Moderation in all things.
Exactly. It's healthy in a democracy. You need to have that. You need to have some modicum of respect for your opponent.
Janet?
As a person.
Well, my husband and I met when we were both on the left and what became the new left. And in fact, he was the designer of the Black Dwarf. If any of you remember the Black Dwarf, worked with Tariq Ali. We were both on the far left. And we both moved further. We voted Conservative for the first time when it was Margaret Thatcher after the winter of 1979. But I moved faster than he did. So there was a point at which he was still to the left of me, and then he caught up and went further to the right than me. But we never actually became polarised.
Did you ever fall out about this?
No. We just tried to persuade each other.
Yeah, because my partner is, shall we say, far more right-wing than I am. But there are some times when I have to launch a little bit of an education campaign.
Right,
shall we say.
Right. Yeah, well,
he won't be listening.
We did a bit of that.
Jack?
I mean, I've lived in Suffolk for about 25 years now, and I mean, Suffolk is hardly the socialist republic of the world. So I think you do grow up and you meet people of all sorts of different views and backgrounds, and it is how you deal with people. And look, we've got a real hodgepodge of different council leaders and everything else like that. So my job would be almost impossible if I sort of pulled up the drawbridge.
But what about personal relationships?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's the same thing. Like your mates, dare I say, even, your family sometimes, and your other kind of acquaintances, families, and whatever else. Of course, you're going to come and bump into people. I think it would also be really boring, wouldn't it, if you just kind of agreed with each other all the time. And debate and discussion is interesting and kind of fruitful, surely. So I probably agree with James. I mean, there are obviously boundaries and divided lines on that sort of front, but I think it's good, and that's how you get progress as well, like having a proper debate, and we're having it in our own party at the moment. It's a very broad church, as they say, and as is the Conservative Party as well. So even within people who are meant to be kind of your same political persuasion, you're always going to have differences.
Harriet.
Yeah, I think as everyone else has said, like it's not as if we all live in our little bubbles, whether that's sort of opinion A, opinion B bubble, or Conservative bubble, Labour bubble, SNP bubble. Like, people mix. Like it's.
But could you imagine being married to an SNP supporter? Kate Forbes, for example, who's now not in the Scottish Parliament anymore. Her husband, staunch Tory, and I did think to myself when I interviewed her, that must be an interesting discussion over dinner.
But that's because, I mean, that sort of assumes that people are only, like, there's more to someone than their political view, I would hope. I would assume. And I mean, certainly for me, I mean, I couldn't tell you how most of my friends vote. We don't discuss it. Like, it's not really relevant. Like, we discuss sort of other interests or what we're doing or sort of how our families are. But I don't really want to know what their opinion is on the fiscal policy of the UK.
But you'd want to know what your significant other's views were, surely.
Yes, but he is a very, very wise man, and he is a strong Conservative.
Well, he is now.
He had no choice. No, that was a fortunate coincidence. Or non-opposites attracting, whatever you want to call it.
Right, let's move on. Oscar in Leeds says, if a political party is asking celebrities to help them out, is that a sign that they've run out of ideas? Now, the Education Secretary has been criticised over a series of videos published by the Department for Education, which features Bridget Phillipson meeting with the Only Way is Essex TV personality, Gemma Collins, who I sat opposite at Malaga Airport once, but didn't have the courage to say hello. It's a bit of an odd choice, isn't it, Janet?
Yeah. I must say, what counts as celebrity now seems to come almost entirely out of reality TV. And I think, there are celebrities and celebrities, if you're talking to a concert pianist, I don't mean to be a snob about this, or you're talking to a very well-known actor or an author, that's a quite different thing from talking to somebody from some reality TV. Maybe it's a deliberate ploy to look more proletarian because she's a Labour politician. I think it's ill-judged.
But are you more likely to watch a video with Gemma Collins than one of Professor XYZ from some noted university?
Well, I wouldn't be, no, but I'm probably, that's my idiosyncrasy. Okay. I probably wouldn't go for the reality TV stuff.
Harriet?
I did watch the first about 10 seconds of this video. I don't think it lasted that much longer than that. And I found it excruciating. Like, I don't want to be sort of overly pious about this, but the Department of Education is an incredibly important department. They're there to actually help educate, as well as possible, the children of the UK, the next generation of the UK. And I would really hope that the Education Secretary was spending her time meeting people who actually understood, worked in, helped progress the academics of the country, whether that's primary school, secondary school, university, apprenticeships. There are so many other people she could have been meeting than effectively just to do a sort of bit of a stunt meeting a reality TV star. And
But Gemma Collins is incredibly successful. What's not to like? Are you being a bit of a snob?
Maybe I am. I don't know. But if you want to talk about being a snob or not being a snob, Bridget Phillipson was very proud of herself for saying that she wasn't going to meet or hadn't met any private schools. That's much more important for her to be meeting than a reality TV star. I just don't understand why. Meet them, absolutely. But the fact that you also make such a big show of it, I find that extraordinary.
James, your lost boys, they're more likely to watch Gemma Collins, aren't they, than somebody else? Or am I being a snob by just saying that?
Maybe not her specifically, but influencers in general. It's more of a sign of the times, I think, than an indictment of like Bridget Phillipson. I think political parties have long try to bring celebrities into their marketing, and short form video is now the most popular format. I try to avoid it as much as I can. I try to avoid influencers as much as I can, but if it gets more people interested in what's going on in the education system, then whatever. It's more of a sign of the times. I think that's the way some of these things are going. More people watch influencers than watch the news anymore. You have influencers on even panel shows like Question Time anymore. I don't think that's a good thing.
Dare I say it, even on this show from time to time.
I don't think that's a good thing. That personally, I'm a bit of an elitist, right, I suppose, on these things. But
Corey, never book an influencer when James is on the panel. Jack.
I think we're taking this a little bit too seriously, aren't we? I mean, look, when I get introduced in school and they say, oh, you've got a very special guest, they're not thinking Jack Abbott MP, they're thinking Kieran McKenna or Ed Sheeran, and then when I walk in, they're incredibly depressed about it. I think, James is sort of right. I think we've got to be understanding that it's how do you connect with people? And there are some celebrities, or whatever you want to call it, who've been incredibly influential in talking about their own personal experiences, raising awareness about certain campaigns. And as I said, I think sometimes there's a bit of fun. I mean, to suggest that Bridget Phillipson's doing nothing but meeting Gemma Collins isn't particularly serious. And I think also, as James said, we've got to reach different parts of the country, and that includes younger people as well. And we want to get them engaged in politics. We want them to be across the issues. And when I go and meet young people in schools or colleges, they're so switched on and engaged and political. They don't always know it. They've got politics running through their veins. They care about stuff. So using different people at the right times on different issues, I think is a healthy thing, and we shouldn't be turn up noses up too much.
We should explain that Kieran McKenna is the manager of the beautiful Ipswich Town football club
with award-winning parks,
and Ed
on the
Sheeran
long
is a
listing
popular
for City
music
of Culture, Waterfront. Ed Sheeran who's played for 90,000 people. Lots of really wonderful stuff happening in you. You should come and visit.
Okay. Well,
open invite. Come and see it. It's wonderful.
I'd rather go to Norwich, frankly.
Well, you wouldn't see Premier League football in Norwich.
That is very true. That is very true. Or indeed at West Ham, probably. Right. Rico in Kingsbury has our fun question, which is linked to the previous question. Which celebrity would you want to help you out, whether it's with a campaign or just with household odd jobs? Harriet.
Mr. Motivator, clearly. Who else could you possibly choose? Full stop.
That dates you a bit, doesn't it?
Last time I was on here, I was talking about my love for meatloaf, so I think I've dated myself before.
Jack?
My partner really wants to do the decking outside and some new flooring, so probably Tommy Walsh, wasn't it, who did ground floors? Yeah. I mean, talking about contemporary celebrities, I think we're really, really showing our age there, but maybe Charlie Dimmock as well as a water feature as a bonus extra as well.
Janet?
Oh, anybody from Gardener's World to come and help out with the garden and give us some guidance on redesigning the garden.
James?
I narrowed it down to Jurgen Klopp to talk about football, or Dua Lipa to obviously just talk about literature. She has a really fantastic, speaking of, I slagged off short form video and stuff, but she has a really fantastic podcast on books. Which,
who'd have thought? Thank you all very much indeed for coming on the show tonight. On tomorrow's panel, we have Reform UK's candidate for the next London mayoral election in 2028, Layla Cunningham, the chief of the Lecturers Union, the University and College Union, Joe Grady, former Boris Johnson advisor Gito Harry, and the political journalist Michael Crick. That's going to be a good panel. Right, in the next hour, a 38-stone woman has told LBC of her devastation after she was told that she is ineligible for a miracle weight loss jab. And this has set me wondering, well, if she isn't eligible for it, goodness knows who ought to be. And given that I'm eligible for it on the NHS, that makes me feel slightly guilty. So I want to ask you in the next hour whether you think that these weight loss jabs should be more widely available on the NHS, because apparently at the moment you have to have 4 comorbidities to get Mounjaro, Ozempic, Wegovy, whatever. Should the rules be loosened? 0345 6060 973.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 9 o'clock, 3 women whose bodies were recovered from the sea off Brighton a week ago have been identified as sisters. Jane Adatoro and Christina and Rebecca Walters were all in their 30s and from Uxbridge. LBC's Emma Core has the latest.
We have also had a heartbreaking statement from their father, Joseph. He's put out a tribute to his daughters. It reads, "Today, with a heart full of sorrow and love, I play tribute to my beloved daughters, whose lives ended so tragically far too soon. No words," he says, "can describe the pain of losing 3 daughters in the prime of their lives."
A murder investigation's underway after a bus driver died following an assault on Battersea Bridge in London on Monday. Police say 64-year-old Sergei Krajev was assaulted following a confrontation while his bus was parked. He died in hospital the next day. A 32-year-old man's been remanded into custody charged with causing grievous bodily harm. The Defence Secretary John Healey's accused Russian pilots of unacceptable behaviour after they intercepted the RAF over the Black Sea. The Ministry of Defence says one Russian jet flew as close as 6 metres to an RAF rivet joint aircraft, disabling its autopilot. He told the Commons the UK has made formal objections against the actions.
I've revealed details of the dangerous interference with the RAF rivet joint surveillance aircraft by 2 Russian jets over the Black Sea. And we have démarched the Russians over this totally unacceptable act.
A planned rise in fuel duty in September will be postponed until at least the end of the year. The Prime Minister says the government will extend the current freeze to help offset the rising cost of oil prices caused by the war in Iran. And a retrial has collapsed over allegations 2 men assaulted a police officer at Manchester Airport. The jury failed to reach a verdict at Liverpool Crown Court. And the UK has become the first G7 country to agree to a trade deal with a bloc of Gulf states. The government says the agreement will boost the economy by an estimated £3.7 billion a year. In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed up 101 points at 10,432. The pound buys $1.34 and €1.15. LBC weather showers easing tonight with clear spells for central areas. Rain moving in from the west later, a low of 3 degrees. From Global's newsroom, for LBC, I'm Daryl Jackson.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. It's 9:04 on LBC. We're going to have a slight gear change in this hour and talk about weight loss, because if you are somebody who is clinically obese, and obviously the definition from that seems to vary from year to year, but if you are 38 stone in weight, you would probably... I'm sure there are people that are clinically obese who are completely happy with being so, and would never think of going on a weight loss jab, and actually rather resent the idea that other people should say to them, well, I think you should. Because we are all very judgmental, aren't we, in terms of looking at people's appearance, thinking, well, why is somebody so obese? Surely they should do something about it. But it's not always that easy, is it? And I think the case that we're going to talk about in a moment is I think, quite a salutary one, because the NHS, and this is one of the things that West Streeting brought in, they have decided that weight loss jabs are very good for people and will save the NHS money in the long run. And if you remember a couple of years ago when they brought this in and said, well, people can actually get it free on the NHS rather than paying, £300 or £400 a month, there was a big sort of row about it. Whether is that really what the NHS should be spending its money on? Well, let's look into the case of Abigail in Dewsbury, who she's a regular caller to LBC, and Tom Swarbrick was talking about this subject. And let's hear what she had to say. And then I want to ask you whether you think that, having listened to her, you think there is a case for loosening the rules on prescribing things like Mounjaro or Ozempic to people in Abigail's position. She phoned into Tom Swarbrick a few weeks ago to talk about her own experience of trying and failing to get hold of weight loss drugs.
I weigh about 41 stone, so I've probably got to lose a lot of weight, right? Okay, so I've got the physiotherapist that's coming to my house. I've got district nurses coming to my house, asking the GP, saying, look, right, this girl is housebound. She's housebound, right? To the point, if anything happened to me, they'd have to probably get firemen to get me out. It's really bad, right? You're talking about how bad it is. Every time Mounjaro comes on, I'm like, hang on, it's not nobody wants to give it to me.
Now, after that call, LBC's Yorkshire correspondent Alex Taylor-Brown went to Dewsbury to meet with Abigail and find out why she's been denied Mounjaro.
Well, I'm a bit ashamed, really, to admit that I was at one point 44 stone. I'm about 39.8 stone now, I think, my last measurements. But yes, I do have lymphedema, which is a bad thing. I do have sleep apnea. But because I don't have actual diabetes or other, blood pressure issues, which surprises me in my size, but the criteria is so hard, they won't do it. The end goal would be to lose weight, to be able to be fitter, to be able to get out of the house. Yeah. I'm stuck in the house. I can't get out of the house.
How difficult is that?
To get out of the house? It's horrible. I just wish I was dead. I know I've done to myself. I'm not expecting any sympathy for anybody, right? I know. To be honest with you, I know I've done it to myself. I actually wish I was dead. It's horrible. It's horrible. This is not a life. This is an existence. I've got a lot of issues with myself. I've got a lot of trauma in my life. I'm not blaming that. There's no excuse, really, to be like this. It's really sad because I don't know. Sometimes I don't want to live. It's really hard. I don't want to be like this. It'd be nice just to get out, just to go see things, just to go out.
Are you right? Do you want to take a second?
No, it's fine. I want people to see. It's not nice. People say stuff online and they think you're stupid. I know what not to eat, right? But do you know what it is? When I was in hospital, I was losing weight, wasn't I? Because they were giving me 3 meals a day. I didn't think about food. I didn't care about food, right? But when you're at home, right, and you've got nothing to do or talk to or be alone or whatever, I hate it. It's like an addiction. It's like you can't stop it even though you know it's killing you. I can't stop it, and I want to be put somewhere, but they won't do that. So why won't they fund the GLP? They're not funding that. They're not funding it. They don't want to help you.
You kind of self-funded for a while. You know, for those listeners who are maybe not sort of aware of it, just explain as well in terms of what that personal cost is, and then why you kind of had to turn around and say, do you know what, I can't self-fund this anymore.
Well, I'm already on. I get PIP and I get universal credit with sickness element. I think like the first time you do it, it's like £100 or whatever, because they get you in because it's cheaper, 2.5. But I got up to 7.5, and I was finding it was working. I just couldn't. It kept going a bit more expensive. I think it was like, it was getting up to £200 or something, if not more, I think. But it was on every month. It was fine if it was every so many months, but you can't do that every month because I've got my own bills. I've got rent. I wanted to sacrifice. I wanted to do it for myself to say that, that I'm sacrificing things, because obviously I don't expect it all handouts.
When you were using it, obviously you could feel that it was having an impact, it was having an effect. What do you feel if you'd have been able to keep going with it? What do you feel that ultimately the benefits to you would be, Abigail?
I think that you need me to lose my weight up till I get to surgery, right? Because obviously the end goal probably is to get surgery. Because I think even if I was on GLP, it'd maybe take a long time. But I think having that GLP-1, I'd like to see if it does help me lose weight. That combined, I thought, with the service, combined with some psychological support, combined with some more... The problem is I don't give you any support. I want to be off sick, right? I used to work. Wouldn't even know how to even get a job again. Even if I lost all my weight, I'd need a lot to go back into that. So if you don't want people to end up like me, you need to help people with GLP-1. You need to help people with psychological support, because we're rotting away here.
That's LBC caller Abigail in Dewsbury speaking with our Yorkshire correspondent Alex Taylor-Brown. Well, let's get some professional analysis of this situation. Dr. Simon Cork joins me, Senior Lecturer in Physiology at Anglia Ruskin University, who specialises in obesity and weight loss drugs. Simon, good evening. When you hear Abigail talk in those terms, what's your immediate reaction?
I think you can tell by listening to Abigail's story there just how desperate, well, firstly, the impact that obesity has on people's lives, people's quality of life. We have to start recognising that obesity is a chronic disease, and it does massively affect people's quality of life. But you can hear the desperation in her voice that people up until recently have not really had any viable options of treating severe obesity like what Abigail suffers from, other than diet and exercise, which clearly doesn't work. So you can hear the desperation in her voice that patients now hear that we've got safe, effective treatment options for people with obesity, but the system has yet to catch up with being able to offer that service to everybody.
So the question I'm asking my audience in this hour is, how widely available should weight loss medication be? Now, look, I don't know her exact medical diagnosis, nor do you, but it seems very strange to me that as a type 2 diabetic, I can qualify for Mounjaro on the NHS and she can't.
Yeah, so it's a difficult question. And as I say, we haven't had any real viable treatment options for patients with obesity until recently. And so the NHS hasn't really been built and designed to cope with what will be a massive demand. So there's a timescale in which the NHS needs to adapt to be able to offer the adequate support and wraparound care that's necessary to get the biggest effect from these weight loss drugs. They're not magic bullets. They don't simply burn weight. They need to be met with appropriate wraparound care that the NHS is building in capacity. So that's one of the issues. The other issue is that there simply isn't enough supply of these medications. There's a worldwide demand for these drugs, and supply at the minute outstrips demand. Demand outstrips supply, and so the decisions that NICE have given the NHS is that those with the greatest need, and that at the minute is those with a very high BMI, so a BMI of over 40, and 4 comorbidities. So there's 4 conditions from a list of predefined conditions that are associated with obesity. And those patients who meet that criteria are essentially at the biggest risk of serious health consequences from obesity. So it makes sense, given the limitations of the way the NHS functions and the limitations of supply, that those who are at most risk of dying from obesity, because it is a disease, are prioritized. Now, over the course of 5-10 years, those criteria will relax. Nobody's saying that more people would benefit from these drugs. People like Abigail would absolutely benefit from these drugs. The issue at the minute is that the supply is not keeping up with the demand, and that we need to build the capacity within the NHS in order to make sure that patients can get the best wraparound care and the best support that they need.
I'd quite like to get your response to this text I've just had in from Paul, who says, I can't believe you're promoting weight loss jabs. Everyone can lose weight by calorie counting or basically stopping stuffing cake in their mouths. What next? A jab to stop us using social media? People these days are just bone lazy to put some effort on to lose weight. I mean, that's a fundamental misunderstanding of obesity, isn't it?
I think obesity is probably one of the final so stigmatized conditions. People will always say it's a lifestyle choice, and it's people should just stop. Like your caller, you should just stop eating. We need to eat in order to survive. And actually, there are lots and lots of diseases that have modifiable lifestyle factors. Breast cancer has for many people is a modifiable risk with alcohol and diet and exercise. We don't say the same about patients with breast cancer, quite understandably and quite rightly. But for some reason, because for many people we see obesity as an aesthetic issue, because it disproportionately affects those from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, we, as a society, place an incredible amount of stigma on those patients who need help. The medical community recognize obesity as a disease in the same way that we recognize high blood pressure as a disease that needs to be treated with drugs. If it was as easy as that text says, and you just stop stuffing cake in your face, then we would not have an obesity crisis.
The point that Abigail made, where she said, well, when I was in hospital, I did lose weight. I had 3 meals a day and I didn't think about eating anymore. But when I'm at home on my own and I've got no one to talk to, that's when, well, she didn't use these words, but that was when she, well, let's just say overeats. And when I broke my hip and I was essentially incapacitated for three weeks or so, I found that I think I lost 1.5 to 2 stone in weight just because I was lying on the couch all day and doing absolutely nothing. I didn't particularly want to eat an awful lot, and the weight just fell off, which I found very odd, but clearly she had the same experience.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's different, right? I mean, the causes of obesity for different people are vary. What a lot of people who suffer with obesity talk about is what we call food noise, and it sounds very much like what Abigail's talking about, where the cheese in the fridge is shouting at you, or the crisps in the cupboard. You can't stop thinking about food. And as we increase our understanding of what causes obesity, we're starting to learn an awful lot about the genetics of obesity, and actually lots of the genetic predispositions that patients with obesity have relate to our brains, the pathways in our brain that control hunger. And those with certain genetic predispositions to obesity are more likely to be hungry than others, and food noise is part of that. And distractors such as being in hospital, not being at home, can help to mask that. But it can be food hunger is an incredibly powerful motivator of behaviour across the animal kingdom. We are no better than any other animals in that regard. So it's an incredibly powerful motivator of behaviour. And for some patients, some people with obesity, it is much, much more difficult to work against that than it is for others.
Simon, thank you very much indeed. That's Dr. Simon Cork there, Senior Lecturer in Physiology at Anglia Ruskin University. Mike says, we need to fat shame. What an appalling person you must be, Mike. 18 minutes past 9.
This is LBC.
Close your eyes. Take a deep breath. And come on in to Classic FM Calm, LBC's soothing sister station. Find peace in the music with Classic FM Calm. Listen on Global Player or ask your smart speaker to play Classic FM Calm.
Experience. It's knowing the difference between a good deal and, well, a great deal. Saga Travel Insurance covers most pre-existing medical conditions and has been named a Which Best Buy. Smart choice. And right now you can get 20% off travel insurance until the 11th of June. Search Saga Travel Insurance for a quote today. New policies only, subject to medical screening. Standard and Plus or Which Best Buys May 2025. Terms and conditions apply. Over 50s only.
Donations to British Heart Foundation fund scientific research that can help save lives. People like Joe, who's pitching his next big business plan. Maria, who's sending out her wedding invitations. And Jack, who's just being a teenager again. Because when you donate, you fund more than just science. You help save lives. British Heart Foundation funds research that aims to cure inherited heart muscle diseases. But our work is not done. Donate now at bhf.org.uk and keep us beating.
I'm in the kitchen with Charlie Bigham. So what have we got here, Charlie?
My brand new pan-fried pad thai noodles.
Noodles? But you're Mr. Fish Pie guy.
Guilty. And while ovens rule at roasting,
the pan is king of noodling.
Whether it's pad thai, yakisoba or laksa, finding that perfect texture is a bottomless noodle rabbit hole.
But all I have to do is stir it in the pan for 6 minutes, right?
Bingo! Try the new Charlie Bigham's Asian pan-fried noodle range. Handmade in my kitchen.
Pan-fried in yours.
Iain Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
20 past 9 on LBC. It is awful in some ways about how this subject really brings out the worst in people. That text I read out from Mike earlier, that was the latest in a series of horrible texts that he sent in. Either people find obesity funny, or they want to insult people. And I wonder what it says about people who have that mindset that they just think, I mean, it could be you one day, because obesity, people think that it's just self-inflicted, that, oh, you eat too much, so if you just stop eating too much, that will be a cure. Well, if only it was that simple. Do you not think that people have thought about that themselves? But there are some people whose body metabolism just doesn't work like that. And that is where these weight loss jabs, I think, have been an absolute lifesaver to some people. I mean, you could hear the desperation in Abigail's voice there, couldn't you? And, I mean, it's not just the physiological effects of obesity, it's also the mental health effects, because if you are somebody who's probably prone to depression as well, I mean, that is a pretty horrible place to be in, where you don't like your own body, there's nothing you think you can do about it, and that sends you into a spiral of depression. It's a horrible place to be. If you've been in that place, let me know. And what's been your experience if you have been? I mean, somebody like Abigail, who she said she was, I thought it was 38 stone, but she said she was 41 stone at one point. Has that been you? And have these weight loss jabs actually helped you? Maybe not go down from 38 stone to 9 stone, but it is incredible the amount of weight that people can lose. my best friend Dan, he went down from 23 stone to 14 stone in a matter of months. Now, I was really worried about him because I thought, well, that can't be healthy for someone to do. But he feels so much better about himself. He looks a lot better. And so what's not to like? Now, that was, he had to pay for it. I mean, I think it was like £400 a month, which is an incredible amount of money. I mean, anybody on a normalish salary is not going to find that an easy thing to do, are they? So do you think that weight loss medication should be more widely available on the NHS? And do you think that the logic is that if it is, it will actually help save money in the long run? That's what Wes Streeting told us when he was Health Secretary. David's in Newcastle. Hi, David.
Hi, Ian. Nice to speak to you again.
Hi.
I started my Monjournal journey back in November last year. It was through the National Health because I did qualify for 4 of the 5 criteria, which was high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, a heart condition, and the other one was hypertension, I think. Right. High blood pressure, I can't remember. But I got it anyway. But I had to fight for it to get it because I started trying to get it in about the July of that year when Wes Streeting said it was all rolled out across the country.
Yep.
In actual fact, it wasn't. At the time, there was only 5 trusts in the UK that were allowed to prescribe it. And I was the first person in my medical GP practice to get Monjournal on the programme that they had been authorised to release. And I'd enlisted the help of my MP, who then told me a lot of information by dealing with the Northumberland Trust. But if that poor girl can't get Monjournal, there's something very wrong indeed, because it's changed my life.
Sorry, go on.
Pardon?
Go on.
I was 139 kilos in November when I started, and I'm now 106.
So you're roughly what I am now.
Yeah. And the change to my life has been monumental. I had both knees replaced in 2018 and 2019. And as you can imagine, 33 kilos not getting dragged around by my poor knees has made a massive difference.
Yeah.
And I have a weight bar in my garage, and I use the garage door to go in and out of the house when I'm going into the garden. And it's got 25 kilos on it. And I lift it every time I walk past it. I lift it up and I do 10 just arm curl reps every time I walk past it. And I walk past it and I think, when I pick it up, the first thought that pops into my head is, I was carrying more than that round with me every day. I couldn't put it down. The only way I could take the weight away from it was to lie down, and it was still flopping about all over my body. And it's a huge weight when you pick it up. And as I say, it's changed my life. And if that poor girl got half the results that I got within 10 months, 6 months, whatever it is, she's on a winner.
And did you go up to the top dosage?
No. I started off on 2.5. I did 2.5 for 2 months. Then I went to 5. Then I went to 7.5. And I'm sticking on 7.5. I've got 4 more pens to get before I finish the programme. And I'm going to work it back down to 2.5 so that when I get to the point where I'm not getting any more, I don't really feel that I need it. But I have made some massive changes to my diet.
Yeah, because you see, that is a common misunderstanding about these weight loss jabs. If you just continue eating the way that you did before, yes, you will probably still lose weight, but it'll be much more slowly.
But the thing is, Ian, I don't know what you felt when you were taking it. I cannot eat as much as I used to. It's not physically possible for me to put that in my mouth and swallow it when I am taking Monjournal. Yeah,
I find that I leave things on my plate which I would never have done before.
Yeah, and the volume of food. I've actually bought my main meal now consists of a small tea plate.
I won't say I've got to that point, but like you, I've only gone up to 7.5 because this will make you laugh. I don't know if you had this, but it can have side effects, Mounjaro, and it makes my stomach gurgle. And it was getting to the point that I was worried that it would come out on the microphone in the studio. So I thought, well, if I go up to 10, I can't risk going up to 10. in case I have to come off the radio.
Unfortunately, there's been a few times during the night where I've woken up to find the bed empty and my wife in the spare room.
Oh, because of your stomach?
Well, what was coming out the other end.
Oh.
Very loudly.
Oh.
Wind was horrific.
I'm not going to give any personal experiences on that score.
Yeah, well,
Chris is begging me not to.
It's quite worrying. And then when you read about it, the side effects, that's part of it. Yeah. The other side effect that was very strange was I get cold. And I never used to get cold. I mean, I worked outside. I worked in open factory environments for 30-odd years, and a lot of it was outside in Newcastle where the weather isn't exactly the best. And I mean, even in wintertime, I'd be the nut walking around in the shop.
David, I was in Newcastle on Sunday, and it was a lovely day, apart from the football.
Well, we have the odd one. Best not to go into town when the town's playing.
Well, I was staying in the hotel right opposite St James's Park, but it was...
The Sandman.
That's the one, yes. Yeah. It's a very nice hotel. Anyway, enough of that. David, thank you very much indeed. Right, let's take a couple of texts before we go to the news, and then we'll take some more of your calls. Lolly from Leicester, what a lovely name. My heart goes out to Abigail. It's an addiction and should be treated as such. I hope she gets the help she needs. She sounds really lonely and unhappy. And this next one comes from Stephen, who says, I think fat shaming is going over the top, but I do think there needs to be more personal responsibility in general. You only get fat by eating more calories than you burn. So eating less and getting more exercise is not a bad idea. And in theory, you're absolutely right. And I like to think that I am playing my part in what I'm doing, in that I do go to the gym and I have a personal trainer. I know that sounds just so, I can't say the word that I want to say, but so ridiculous. And I've really tried my best to moderate my diet. And it does, as David said there, it does mean that you don't actually want to eat as much. I won't say that I've lost as much of my appetite as I thought I might, but you certainly don't eat as much. And if you eat more of the right things, again, something I'm trying to do, I'll have a stir fry rather than a fry up. And to me, that counts as making an effort, doesn't it? 0345 6060 973. Do you think there is a case for making weight loss jabs much more widely available on the NHS? Now, after the news, we're also going to talk about the charging in the US of the former Cuban president, Raul Castro, over the downing of 2 jets in the 1990s. And it makes you wonder whether Donald Trump might be after regime change in Cuba as well. I'm just floating the idea. It's 9:30. News headlines on LBC with Daryl Jackson.
3 women whose bodies were recovered from the sea off Brighton Beach were sisters. Their fathers paid tribute to his daughters Jane Adatoro and Christina and Rebecca Walters, who were all in their 30s. The Ministry of Defence says 2 Russian jets repeatedly and dangerously intercepted an RAF spy plane above the Black Sea. A Russian jet flew so close it triggered the aircraft's emergency systems, which disabled the autopilot. And Downing Street says Sir Keir Starmer's reaffirmed the UK's steadfast support for Ukraine in a call with Volodymyr Zelensky this evening. The Prime Minister also discussed sanctions on Russian oil with Ukraine's president. LBC weather. Showers easing tonight with clear spells for central areas. Rain moving in from the west later, a low of 3 degrees.
This is LBC.
The following is from TfL. I got loads of flowers the other day. And messages from people I didn't even know. My mates spelled out my name in tea lights. And my mom hung my favourite footy shirt on the railings, next to the lamppost, where I got killed. By a nice lady. Just someone who thought it was okay to go a few miles an hour over the limit.
Speeding injures or kills over 1,000 people in London every year. Slow down. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Tackles that crunch and theatrical diving. Rivals on terraces sobbing and crying. Last minute winners that change everything. These are a few of our favourite things. When you're singing, yet not winning. When your bet's gone bad. We simply remember our favourite things. And then we'll feel so glad.
For all your favourite things, visit BetVictor. 18+, gambleaware.org. Please gamble responsibly.
At John Lewis Money,
We know your home is more than an address. It's the sunlight pouring in. Well, sometimes. The coffee on tap and the best spot on the sofa. It's why our home insurance is thoughtfully designed with 3 levels of flexible cover for the home you've created. Because when you notice the details, you notice the difference. Search John Lewis Money. Terms and exclusions apply. John Lewis Finance Limited is authorised for insurance distribution and credit broking by the Financial Conduct Authority.
Iain Dale on LBC.
It's 9:33 on LBC. Remember yesterday we were talking about the fact that Southampton Football Club were expelled from the Championship playoffs. Well, just an update on that today. It was because they sent someone to spy on Middlesbrough. The panel from the English Football League, the EFL, has tonight rejected Southampton's appeal against them being ejected from the Championship playoffs. So the final will be Middlesbrough versus Hull City at Wembley Stadium this Saturday afternoon. I don't think we've heard the last of that. I mean, I don't see how Southampton could really have appealed against it, because they were clearly banged to rights, weren't they? Because it wasn't just the match against Middlesbrough or the training at Middlesbrough they spied on. Apparently they did it to several other teams as well. They've been deducted 4 points for next season as well, and that penalty stays in place too. Effectively, though, you could argue that this has been the largest fine in English football ever, because the cost to them of not being promoted to the Premier League will be around £200 million. And then, I'm going to get my soapbox here, you have Manchester City, who've been facing 115 charges of all sorts of wrongdoing, and this has been going for 2 years. Now, credit to the EFL for grasping this and making the decision very quickly. But what on earth are the Premier League doing over these charges, which are many of them very, very serious? So if we were a football station and did football phone-ins, I might change the subject now and carry on with that. But since we're not, I won't. Now, we are going to talk about Cuba, because the Cuban president, Raul Castro, is being charged in the US over the 1996 shooting down of planes run by Cuban Exiles Group, with speculation growing that Trump is keen on regime change in Havana. Well, I think every American president since Kennedy has been keen on that. Let's talk to Dr. Christopher Sabatini, director of the brand new Latin America program at Chatham House. Christopher, very good evening.
Thank you.
Now, tell us, I mean, this has suddenly come up in the news over the past 24 hours or so, but there have been rumours for some time that Cuba might be next on Donald Trump's list. What do you think is going to happen?
It's difficult to tell. I mean, I think there's been a pattern in Venezuela and Iran that we could extend to Cuba. I think that pattern is, first of all, an attempted escalation in the hope of improving a negotiating position or trying to rattle the regime enough to even provoke defections that could provoke regime change. That didn't happen. Then threaten the use of force or use of force. In the case of Cuba, it's a different country, obviously, than Venezuela and Iran. I don't think even this indictment of Raul Castro will provoke the sorts of fear within the regime and disloyalty that the government expects in the U.S. And then I think we don't know where it will go from there, because this has been a series of, again, maximum pressure strategies, starting with the cutting off of oil. The situation economically is very dire in Cuba right now. People are suffering from malnutrition, sometimes 24-hour blackouts. Something has to happen. And the hope now is for the Trump administration is deliver something. But I'm not really sure they have a strategy on how to get there, what exactly that is.
I mean, indicting Raul Castro is performative, isn't it? Because he's, 95, yeah. something like that.
Yeah.
Do you think that there might be a repeat of what happened in Venezuela, where they send in special forces to basically abduct him?
So first of all, it's the same playbook, definitely. I think there are two issues with this that make it different. First of all, they are definitely indicting Raul Castro. It's difficult to imagine a scenario where they swoop in and take him out. The Cuban regime is much more coherent, much more organized. There's no obvious. Now, Raul Castro currently doesn't occupy a ministerial post or the presidency. It really is, as you said, just symbolism. But the real reason of this is to demonstrate that someone else could be next soon, and to put people in the crosshairs. But also, in part, it's to placate the Cuban American community in Florida, which has been watching for a long time and really wants a total victory, thinks they're on the cusp of it now. This is, for them, has been a symbolic issue for a long time, for understandable reasons. And so this also is if you will, urging patience on the part of the Cuban American community for some sort of slower process that might occur.
And they're a big political force, aren't they? I mean, very, very influential, particularly on Republican Party politics.
Yeah, Florida has 23 electoral votes. It may have gone up with the most recent census. They have a solid block of Cuban-American legislators, and their senators are very powerful, too. Now, they even beyond the number of electoral votes, politically in the U.S., they punch above their weight. And Cubans are a critical swing vote.
Christopher, we will keep an eye on this. Thank you very much indeed. That's Dr. Christopher Sabatini, Director of the brand new Latin America programme at Chatham House. Right, back to your calls on Mounjaro and whether you think it should be made more available, more widely available on the NHS. Kelly is a new caller in Woking. Hi, Kelly.
Hi, it's lovely to speak to you.
And you?
I am a long-time listener, but I have never called in before.
Well, I'm glad we've provoked you tonight.
No, and I wish it was on better circumstances, but I sort of feel from the perspective of a young person, and I work in social media, I feel that actually Mounjaro is a sticking point, and Mounjaro is something, as somebody who is trying to promote good things in social media, it has become a negative. And I mean it from the standpoint that it should be more available, absolutely, to the people that need it from the NHS. But the fact that you can buy it so readily from people who aren't the NHS, it's a tricky thing that is promoting a bad and negative thing in social media. And that is where I'm kind of coming from this standpoint.
I'm not quite sure I understand what you mean. What are you saying, that because people can buy it, if you've got the money to buy it, you can therefore take advantage of it, but if you haven't got the money and you can't get it on the NHS, you're stuffed?
It is that, yeah. Essentially, I think that we are kind of going back, we're reversing time. And from a social media perspective, you're looking at it that we're going back to a Kate Moss era where it's almost like the Diet Coke and cigarettes era has become the social norm for what you're witnessing on social media as a young person. And I think that Mounjaro has made things slightly easier for young people to go, well, do you know what? Aesthetically, I want to look like that. And I can buy that. Not on the NHS. I can get this thing and it will make me look this way. And that feeds into a thing that is now starting to kind of be, I think, something that young people are seeing a lot of on social media. And actually, if you break it down, it's for people that need it. It's not for people that just want it.
No, and I think that is part of the problem, in that I've got several friends who have bought it and taken it purely for aesthetic reasons. They're not overweight, but they'd quite like to lose sort of 6 or 7 pounds or something. And they see Mounjaro as the way to do that. And that is not what it's for.
But that's the point. And if the NHS is saying, no, you don't qualify for it, you don't. But actually, there are people that are still getting on it even though they don't qualify because they can pay for it. And I actually think that's creating a narrative at the moment that is going to naturally descend into something that I think that we walked away from at one point. We walked away from it, and now we're coming back to it.
So what do you think the way forward is?
I think the way forward is that the NHS needs to recognise that the people that do need it for health benefits. There are health benefits to being on this. And if you are somebody who is potentially finding alternative ways of getting it, and you don't actually need it for a health benefit, this is where we start finding this grey area where people, young people especially, I think, are finding it sort of a way of going, oh, well, I can look this way, and this is how everybody is looking this way. And
but that puts doctors in a very difficult position, doesn't it? Because you're kind of maybe I've misinterpreted you, but you're kind of arguing for it to be sort of very widely available. And how would a doctor necessarily be able to say no to somebody who just fancies losing a few pounds?
But I think that's the difference. I think it should be actually, you need to qualify for it for a health benefit. And if it benefits you, that's where the NHS should be saying, yes, you are qualified to have it. If you're
but that's the system at the moment.
It is, but there are people on the level of weight that they are, and they're not qualifying for it. But if you are somebody, for example, who wants to maybe find a different way to receive that jab, there are different ways to receive it, and that's where it's really concerning in terms of the fact that, you know, there are people who actually maybe are already absolutely fine without the jab, and they're still managing to get hold of it. And that's where my concern is. As someone who works in social media, this is what I do as a job, I'm seeing more and more that young people are getting hold of it without the NHS.
Yeah. No, I think you are right on that. Kelly, thank you very much. Tom says, journalism as a whole is missing the point, which she just told you. That's referring to Abigail. When I was in hospital, I didn't worry about food, she said. The overeating is stress response to expected or potential scarcity, which goes hand in hand with financial or job insecurity. A jab is not Abigail's saviour, no matter who provides it. It's about how she sees her own future, not about food. It shouldn't be so difficult to understand this. Well, thanks for the patronising lesson there, Tom. It's 9:45.
Coming up at 10 on LBC, Ben Kentish.
Wes Streeting warns today that the UK is in the grips of a dangerous nationalism, but is that how you see it? Plus, is it time to stop MPs drinking on the job?
Ben Kentish at 10. Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Switching to Vodafone full fibre broadband is now as easy as pie. Ooh, freshly baked. It's a walk in the park. Hello, little fella. It's like taking candy from a baby. Come on, as if I'd do that. With One Touch Switch, it's easy. We sort everything out for you. We even contact your current provider. Plus, we'll help towards leaving fees. Switch today to full fibre broadband with Vodafone.
Up to £200 credit to cover leaving fees. More information and terms at vodafone.co.uk/broadband.
Here's a tale of two commuters. Steve was in a rush and needed to park near the station. Jane also needed a space and booked in advance with your parking space. Steve had a meeting at 9 and panic at 8. Nowhere to park. Jane, she's already in the office and enjoying that morning latte. With your parking space, you can browse thousands of spaces across London and reserve one instantly. Use the code GET10 for £10 off your first booking. Download the Your Parking Space app today.
At John Lewis Money, we know your home is more than an address. It's the sunlight pouring in. Well, sometimes. The coffee on tap and the best spot on the sofa. It's why our home insurance is thoughtfully designed with 3 levels of flexible cover for the home you've created. Because when you notice the details, you notice the difference. Search John Lewis Money. Terms and exclusions apply. John Lewis Finance Limited is authorised for insurance distribution and credit broking by the Financial Conduct Authority.
When you're smiling, don't let missing teeth stop you smiling. At Banning Dental, our experts could restore your beautiful smile with premium dental implants. See online for our price match promise. Banning Dental Group Clinics. Keep on smiling.
Keep on smiling, and the whole world smiles with you.
banningdental.co.uk.
Iain Dale on LBC.
9:47 on LBC. Let's go to Lester in Notgrove in Gloucestershire. Hello, Lester.
Good evening, Neil. Ian, sorry.
Hi.
I don't know why I try to call you Neil.
I'll tell you what, tonight I've been called far worse than that.
Sorry, buddy.
Go on.
Yeah, so I've been on Manjaro since the end of January, and it has dramatically changed my life. I got it because I have diabetes, and as far as I'm aware, that's what it was originally designed for. It wasn't designed for, as I say, fat people, because I was a fat person, but it has changed my life absolutely. I no longer, so I'm making a saving. I'm getting the Manjaro, but I'm also making a saving because now I'm not taking any insulin for my diabetes, because the Manjaro and the way I've changed has completely got rid of that.
So it solved it that quickly?
Yeah, absolutely. I swear to God, I wear a Libra 2 sensor on my
I've got
arm.
one of those.
Yeah, in a few weeks' time, my diabetic nurse is cancelling it because I no longer need it. I no longer need to check my sugar levels. I don't eat like a rabbit. In fact, I had a 10-inch pizza tonight. But the reason I can do that is because I've started indoor rowing. And I row most days, 5, 6, 10,000 metres, whatever.
How old are you?
I'm 65 and I have Parkinson's, just in case.
Can I just caution you on the rowing?
Yes, sir.
The man who's broadcast from the studio next to me, he was younger than you when he had a stroke as a result of rowing. And if he were here now, I think he would want you to think very carefully about the amount that you row.
Okay. All right. I understand. I understand there are implications, but is that not the same for every type of sport?
No, because rowing, I mean, that puts a huge strain on your heart, doesn't it?
Well, that said, I wear a heart monitor, and I did a quick 2,000 meters today. Took about 9 minutes something, and my heart never got above 90 something.
Have you talked to your doctor about this?
Yeah. I mean, I'm in regular sort of like consultations, dare I say, with my diabetic nurse and my Parkinson's nurse.
I mean, look, I'm not a medical person, but you just set off a sort of alarm bell in my mind, thinking that what Andrew Marr went through, and obviously, I mean, he's recovered from it. But it was a horrible time for him and his family, and I wouldn't want anyone to go through that.
Yeah, no, I understand, and I thank you for your concern. For me, like I said, I got it. I got the Manjaro. I've lost 2 stone in weight. I eat what I would consider to be normally, but I exercise and I do things slightly different. And that's, for me, all I can say, really, in terms of that.
How far did you go up the dosage scale?
I'm only on the Manjaro, you mean?
Yeah.
I'm only on 5 milligrams, so I'm on almost the minimum.
So you've never gone above that?
No. And my diabetic nurse is actually asking me to review with the view to lowering my dosage.
So how much? I mean, it's obviously got your blood sugars back on track.
Yeah, they're in the green.
How much weight have you lost?
2 stone. I was 100 kilos, 100.1 kilos in January, and I now weigh 86.75 kilograms.
Well, you're an example to everybody, Lester.
Ian, you do the maths. Because I have Parkinson's, I know we're digressing slightly, but if you'll just indulge me for one moment, I have Parkinson's, and I'm trying to encourage other people with Parkinson's to exercise because it's good for you regardless of whether you've got it or not.
Yeah.
And I've set up, you're going to laugh, a 1,000,000 meter challenge. So I do that over 12 months. So I'll row 1,000,000 meters, and to put it in context, that's 1,000 kilometers, 24 London marathons, or rowing from London to Berlin. And I want to encourage or inspire other people like me, not necessarily rowing, any exercise because it's good for you and it helps me mentally and physically. With my Parkinson's.
You're absolutely right. And I think for people of our age, I mean, look, I only go to the gym once a week. My personal trainer wants me to go more, but at the moment I just can't. And I've been doing this now for 2 years. I feel so much better in myself. It's not. I haven't done it to become a sort of muscle Mary or to get really fit.
No.
I've done it to keep supple, and it's really worked from that point of view.
Well, I've now got a gold medal Olympic medalist as my trainer, as my coach.
Have I heard of him or her?
Her name's Anna Watkins, MBE. She won a gold medal in London Olympics 2012 with Catherine Granger.
Oh, I've heard of Catherine Granger.
Yeah, Emma Watkins. She was the doubles in the sculls in the 2012. I did a quick job for her the other week by chance. We got talking and she said, I used to do a bit of rowing in my day. And she turns out to be the gold medalist because I got her to show me her gold medal and she is now my personal trainer.
Wow.
Anytime you want to come down and do a little bit of rowing, do a little bit of rowing on the machine. My personal trainer, Aaron, he can't compete with that. Now you look. You seriously.
Who do you support in football, Lester?
I don't really follow football, so if you're asking about the Arsenal Man City thing,
no, I'm not. I'm going to break some news to you. I was hoping you would be a Villa fan because Aston Villa.
Oh, did they win in Istanbul?
They've just won the Europa League, the second biggest European football trophy.
Didn't they? And the last time they won it was back in 1982 when Prince William was born.
Now, yes, that? I think you're right. And the guy that scored the goal was called Gary, and I can't remember his surname now.
Oh, right, okay. I heard it on the news, and I saw the reports. They're at Istanbul. They play in the German team, and the last time they won it was in 1982 when Prince William was born.
And Prince William was there to watch the match, and they beat Freiburg 3-0. So congratulations to Aston Villa. Thank you very much indeed, Lester. Let's move on and have a word with Ank in Hounslow. Hello, Ank.
Hello, good evening, Ian. Very productive conversation. Can I just quickly, give my deepest sympathies to the family of the poor souls for the 3 souls in Brighton. There's terrible news. So, yeah, just deepest sympathies about that.
Yeah, so if people are watching and they saw me smile it wasn't smiling at what you just said, because you're absolutely right to express sympathy. It was because Chris just typed on my screen that the Villa goal scorer was not Gary someone, it was Peter With. So I apologise for smiling at an inappropriate moment.
Fair enough. Right. I was just going to say, in terms of the weight loss bit, I have myself lost, I go between 140 and 110 kg every couple of years. It's a bit of a weird thing with me. I sort of lose weight, then I end up gaining weight, and I lose weight. My wardrobe is a bit sort of up and down when it comes to the trouser sizes for myself. But I've never actually used any sort of drugs on that bit. And I feel like I'm very concerned about the long-term implications of using drugs for everyday things. And I feel like a lot of the callers that have called in so far, some of them, they may have genuine sort of concerns and medical reasons, which they may not possibly be able to go to, natural ways, natural means of losing weight. But I do feel like once people provide a solution to do something, I feel like it's just human nature. People, they end up overusing that sort of solution, if that makes sense.
Yes, I mean, the reason why I think many people don't go on to these weight loss drugs is because they come to the conclusion, it's a perfectly logical one, that at some point they'll have to come off them, and therefore the weight will just automatically go on, just like it does with any normal diet. And that was really my view, I suppose. But because I've gone on it not particularly to lose weight, although that is a pleasant byproduct of it, I wanted to get my blood sugars in order, and it's done wonders on that. And I think for someone like me, I suspect I won't ever come off it. I'm at the 7.5 dose at the moment, and I'm not going to go above that. But I suspect, like within a year, I'll probably go down to 5 or 2.5 and just keep it ticking over.
Fair enough. Well, my sort of biggest concern is, what about evolution? Because as you can expect, humans, we've evolved over many, many years. And, Darwin obviously came up with a theory of evolution, but these drugs are relatively new. And obviously, as a generation, it's just been introduced. People are starting to take it. It's all very sudden. And then suddenly it becomes part of life, if that sort of makes sense. So what is the long-term implications? Because at the moment it feels like it's a big experiment and they just want to see what happens with this generation. It's kind of like, some of the other drugs that may have happened in the past. It's like with aspirin, isn't it? So to ban it because they found out, side effects. So for everyone that's taken it, of course, it is like you said for yourself, if there's a concern about blood sugar, then definitely, if you got to do what you got to do. But on the long term, I feel like people need to reconnect back with the fitness realm. And, I went to like a live recording of a comedian show at the BBC studios in central London once. And the comedian, I'm not going to name him, but he basically just went, what do you know, like, do you go running? And I kind of just went, well, I'm learning. And that obviously got a reasonable laugh. But the point is never too late to just learn how to go and, become fit. Every single movement counts. And regardless of whether you are taking the supplements and the medicines or not, it's always good to be fit and, consider actually, taking care of your health in the traditional sense.
Thank you very much indeed, and great call. T says, long-time listener, but never watched your show until tonight, Ian. What a wonderful tie you're wearing. It is one of my favourite ties, it has to be said. More and more people are watching us on the YouTube channel. You can actually watch on your television, can you believe? Thank you for all of your calls and messages this evening. I'll be back tomorrow from 7. Coming up at 1 on LBC, it's James Max, but right now it's Ben Kentish.
Thank you very much, Ian. Hello, a very, very good evening tonight, and welcome to Late Nights with Ben Kentish here on LBC. On the show tonight,
nationalism says look inward, protect your own, turn away from the others. Patriotism says this country is strongest when we are confident enough to be outward looking.
Wes Streeting used his resignation speech today to warn that the rise of reform shows Britain is in the grips of a